Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast The Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all-around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the Nerdy Occultist, aka the Authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Hello, everyone. I have a sword cane now. Special thanks to the professor, the proprietor of Canes and Ables, for that, because now I have an antique cane guy.
And I am your host, last time on Wannabe, the Brainstormer Pop Culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
Again, I have a sword cane. You will get no complaints from me tonight. Apart from the complaints about the stupid, because that is warranted.
Right. Okay, so one off, I do want to apologize that we weren't here on Sunday, but we're gonna make it up here. And also, yeah.
I was busy in a quasi Elizabethan era because Ren Fair. So yay.
Yeah. Also don't blame Dalton much. I was fine. We actually talked about this a lot during the week prior. I was honestly, it was fine with me. It was cool with me. On the fact that I've called on like a lot of times for podcasts, like moved to Monday because of things that happened.
Yeah, and like I was telling Brainstormer, I would have straight up done this from the hotel and probably included my friend Nick in it, except the Wi-Fi of the hotel we were staying at was shies, and it was unwarranted to try and fight with StreamYard over it. And we just got back like 3:30 earlier today, so yeah, that's why we have to do this tonight instead of last night.
Yeah,
sorry guys.
Yeah. Plus, also, I just want Dalton to enjoy himself. Yeah, he rarely gets to do that.
It was definitely a good time. Would highly recommend the PA Ren Fair. And once again, because I feel obligated to shill a vendor who was nice enough to give me a sword cane. If you ever find yourself there and you are interested in canes, particularly specialty canes or antique canes, there is a shop called Canes and Ables, and there's a dealer there called the Professor. He is an expert in antique canes and will get you hooked up with canes with secret compartments or weaponry or sword canes if that's your speed. So there's my recommendation, because a shill for a shill, yeah.
Hello, Ed Brewer. Good to see you. Yeah. So, just some. What cocaines?
What?
Ed said, "What about cocaines?"
As far as I know, there are no canes with hidden drug compartments, although you could ask, because most of his inventory does come from like the 19th century, and that does seem like something a Victorian gentleman would do.
Yes, so we have some stuff covering a few things. One, a major thing from last week. Dalton actually wanted to cover it mostly. We'll get there. I don't want to spoil the surprise, though.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we're going to cover something we haven't covered in like 2 weeks. It'll be another 2 weeks before we cover it again.
Yeah, the white whale of this particular podcast, namely the Rewriting Ripley article.
Yeah.
Again. And
Full
mostly because I promised my friend Nick that we would do more progress on it
Yeah.
this weekend. So yay.
In plain sight, how white supremacy, misogyny, and hate targeted the Star Wars sequel trilogy and won. Yeah. As usual, we're gonna start off where we stopped last time. If you want to go check those out, I try to do my best to keep the list of podcast playlist for that updated.
Yeah, it's called the Rewriting Ripley article playlist, and there are, I believe, 7, soon to be 8 videos in it,
No,
although it might be 8 or
there are
9.
8. There are
Okay,
8.
so this one will be 9 then.
Yeah.
Yep. And we're slightly over halfway through.
Mhm. So we are just going to spend an hour, so about 9:07, 9:10 at best is when we're going to end it. Shall we begin?
We shall begin.
The profitability of hate. Like most figures in the alt-right or reactionary right-wing space, grift is never far behind, whether it be through merchandise, membership clubs, or book sales. It's relatively easy to make money off of YouTube videos. On average, YouTube pays $3 to $5 per 1,000 video streams, but it should be noted that the amount of money a YouTuber makes can vary widely.
Okay, where to begin with that? Okay, first of all, once again, you don't know what the term alt-right means. The term alt-right is very specifically related to soft-core white nationalism. That is completely different from the reactionary right, and also the term reactionary as it is used is mostly used to invalidate any criticism of a particular position by anyone in particular. So, number one, you don't know what the term alt-right means. Number two, reactionary is just a evaluative smear of people you don't like criticizing you. And number three, how dare they seek to make money at the thing they are doing? That is haram, because I intuit from my own head that they are doing it for disingenuous reasons. And that's the other thing. You appear to not know what the word grift means, because the word grift specifically refers to someone who is being deliberately opportunistic, manipulative, or disingenuous in the way that they make money, i.e., someone who actively disbelieves in religion being a televangelist, or someone who actively disbelieves in a particular political position, opportunistically switching between political positions depending on which way the wind is blowing, and so on. So, unless you have evidence that the people in question do not believe what they are spouting, you cannot call them grifters. Even if they're wrong, even if everything you've said thus far in this article is correct, which we've gone into great painstaking detail in other segments of this podcast, most of them are wrong. But even if I was to allow myself the leeway of believing everything you've said thus far is true, you don't get to call these people grifters unless there is any evidence at all they are being opportunistically disingenuous. Which, side note, kind of undermines your belief that they are hate, because in order to be hate content, one would assume that they would actually need to sincerely believe something you found to be hateful, which your definition of hate is completely foobar. But even if we're operating within your worldview for a second there, sir, either they can be genuinely hateful by genuinely believing things you define to be hateful, or they can be grifters by opportunistically being disingenuous about what they believe and just milking their audience. These two things, though, do not coexist. You can't simultaneously grift off your audience and also sincerely believe the things you're believing without any hint of opportunistic disingenuousness. Pick a smear. If you're going to spend this entire article just smearing people to hell and back, and then recontextualizing and taking them out of context, can you at least be consistent in what you're smearing them with? Are they deliberately and sincerely hateful, or are they opportunistically disingenuous grifters? You're gonna have to pick one. I don't believe either of these things. I think, generally speaking, most people believe the things they put in their videos, or at least this kind of video, and they're not being hateful. I'm in camp C. They're neither grifters nor hateful, but what the fuck ever, what do I know, I guess. I've only, actually spoken to these people and am on decent terms with most of them, but whatever. Moving on. Unless Brainstormer left the room to get food or something. If I knew he was going to be gone long enough, I would unscrew my sword cane and show it off, but I don't know when he'll be jumping back in, so can't show off my sword cane because it takes a minute to unscrew it. I guess I can check the comments though to see if anyone else has added anything. Oh, Nelson, hi. Yeah, Nelson should right of Mao is all right.
I'm back.
To these people, yes, Ed, probably it is. But I'm not interested in these people's strawman definitions. I'm interested in definitions that actually make sense and things, and also can be self-applied by the people espousing these beliefs.
I'm back.
Hey, Brainstormer. Just dealing with some comments whilst you're Nelson, I will not talk about defunding the vaginal priest tonight. Oh.
Sorry, I was away for a second.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the grind.
Yeah. Okay. Using this range, I can estimate the amount of money the 20 anti-The Last Jedi YouTubers from above have made in the lifetime of their channel. This does not include any money made from merchandise sales or Patreon subscriptions, which tend to be more lucrative than what the average person can make.
Yes, because YouTube actually actively censors its independent content. But you didn't mention that little canard, the fact that the YouTube establishment is very much on your side to the point of adjusting the algorithm for it. But that would mean that you were the establishment and the aristocracy. And we can't have that when we're painting the other side as the patriarchy. Lightning. Moving on. Brainstormer. Did he left? Did he leave again? Oh, never mind. It would seem.
Sorry, I was well, I dropped something and I didn't want to make too much noise, so I muted for a sec.
Ed, I made a video that showed some of the highlights of the Ren Fair. And I mentioned earlier that I got a sword cane, and the sword cane was from the Ren Fair, and I went into a long spiel about where I got the sword cane, so I don't want to go into it again. And we will always dignify something by you, Nelson, because A, we just generally dignify the chat with responses, and B, as per usual, you are the most prolific commenter. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Moving forward, though.
Keep in mind that the majority of channels have been active for only 3-4 years. The current average max total earnings within the group is $308,966, with a median of $202,369.
Yes, my dear person who wrote this article, whose name I can't remember. It's called engaging with your audience and then proceeding to attempt to please your audience. I know this is a completely foreign concept within Hollywood's current framework, but generally speaking, and I'm not saying capitalism is perfect, and I'm not saying it couldn't do with an adjustment here and there every now and again, but generally speaking, to use an economic term, all other things being equal, engaging with and attempting to please your audience is called a healthy discourse within the context of capitalism. And as a result, people make reasonable sums of money, especially when they are addressing a worthwhile problem in the process. When a problem is large and urgent, it tends to create jobs if the threshold for entering a given space is not too high. And YouTube, for all of its faults, is not a high degree of difficulty to get into. Making an actual living at it requires, the ability to engage with and please an audience. But once you can at least make videos, there's a high degree of probability you will at least find an audience, even if it's just a couple people. Like for example, us,
Yeah. The likely top earner within this group is the Quartering, who potentially has made over $2 million from his channel. Good for him.
Yeah, I don't agree with the Quartering on everything, but I think he's probably a pretty decent guy. Although I will say, I invited him over to Anglinteen's channel once on Anglinteen's behalf because we were trying to branch out and make the community grow and whatnot, and he never got back to me. But I suspect that might have just been because he was busy, and I don't want to project all sorts of woo onto people that might have just been busy that day, especially because that was when he was first getting going. And I mean, his first appearance was on a Sargon stream, so we might have just been beneath his notice. Because when you start with Sargon, there's only so much room you can go up from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Moving on.
Geeks and Gamers, a YouTuber who commonly decries Lucasfilm for their feminist agenda and problems with white people, all in air quotes, has potentially made as much as 80,000, pushing pro-Trump sentiment, anti-feminist propaganda, and white supremacist ideology.
Okay, those three things are completely separate things. I must clarify that once again, you are conflating a bunch of shit that are entirely separable aspects. Yes, I would imagine that Geeks and Gamers does have a bit of a pro-Trump slant, but I don't think I've ever seen a go Trump video on their channel. I've mostly just seen them being vaguely conservative provocateurs. Feminism is not women's rights, or women's interests, and it certainly has no monopoly on the concept of womanhood. So being anti-feminist is not inherently negative or inherently conservative, you absolute mental case. And pointing out that something is anti-white does not make you a white nationalist or a white supremacist. You could just be advocating for straight up egalitarianism. And I've watched enough Geeks and Gamers videos to know that's generally where they fall. They're not pointing out anti-white male sentiment to try and boost white men particularly. They're just pointing out that some people have a bug up their ass about the success rate of white men, and therefore creating anti-white men propaganda. They're not advocating for some kind of ethno state or anything. They're just saying, can we just treat everyone on an even keel here? That being said, I don't watch a lot of Geeks and Gamers because I find their particular brand of provocateurism a bit slanted for my liking. And there's only so many times you can hear the wokeness is ruining Hollywood before you start to think maybe they've looked a little bit too long into the abyss and can no longer tell when good things happen. Because that's my problem with most of these provocateur channels is there's a fine line between criticizing wokeness when it's there or when it is contributory to when something is negative, and there's a difference between that and just knee-jerk reacting every time something does have a little bit of diversity in it. Like, for example, and I know I'm not making any friends here, but Cruella was actually a pretty decent movie. Shang-Chi, actually a pretty decent movie. The Sandman, its casting wasn't some over egregious bit of wokeness, and if you want to know my extended thoughts on that, I ranted for about 2 hours on it on podcast number 116.
It's
But
not long.
yeah, it's
I thought it was at least in the 120s, but I could have been wrong.
Yeah, no, it's either 116 or 115 when we did the 2 hour Sandman reaction.
Right, and I do have some things to say. Kind of similar to Dolan is mainly, and this is kind of like a worry I've had kind of doing this for like so many years now.
Mm-hmm.
Is like I'm always kind of worried that I'm not going to be able to enjoy something, and often just
knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
And also here's the other thing. With the Geeks and Gamers set in particular, a lot of people over in the Geeks and Gamers corner tend to do the conservatism good, left-wing bad thing, and as anyone who is familiar with this show or has watched it for long enough knows, I don't play that game. I think the Satanic Panic and the Jack Thompsons and the Frederick Worthams of yesteryear are terrible, and I don't support the Red Scare, and I don't support the Satanic Panic, and I don't support the family values authoritarians of yesteryear, and nor do I support the social justice authoritarians of this generation. The whole left-wing authoritarianism is worse, so right-wing authoritarianism doesn't look as bad. In retrospect, maybe we should go back to it thing. No, my stance is not. Maybe the authoritarianism of yesteryear wasn't as bad now. It's maybe we should seek a non-authoritarian place to swing the paradigm. Just a thought. Maybe we should tell both the conservative Christians and the deconstruct everything that moves academics to get fucked, because it's possible that neither of these groups have been very helpful for most of the 20th century.
Nelson Gentleman, for the one he made at 28-22. He's okay. I don't hate the quarter. He's just not my cup of tea. Yeah, that I agree with. There are actually a lot of YouTubers that I'm now looking at that I used to subscribe to and watch videos of that I've kind of just stopped. And
I am, for the record, subscribed to both the Quartering and Geeks and Gamers, so it's nothing personal against them or anything. Their content wears on me.
It's just more so it's just their content. I've just kind of lost interest in, like with your boy Zach or your Professor Geek, for totally different reasons, obviously.
Because
nothing against our boy Zach, or Diversity Comics when he first started off, and it's just it doesn't really seem like he's trying in his videos anymore, and that's fine. He's got his own thing, he's doing the comics and stuff. That's fine.
Yeah, it became chasing Twitter outrage more than it became about the actual. Because this is the thing. my opposition to wokeness primarily is about how it ruins things that we love. But if there's no evidence of it ruining anything that I love in this particular instance or this particular example, then I don't care. I don't care that, a character is gay or race swapped or whatever. I care about in what context was that done? Was that done because you had an interesting story idea or an interesting aspect of world building you wanted to explore? Or was that done because of abstract morality reasons? Because at that point, you're no better than the Christians going, every movie needs to have pro-Christian messaging or you're doing it wrong, derp. Which they did for a very long time, and even before movies, they did to like plays and shit. I mean, there's a reason why William Shakespeare's The Tempest ends with Prospero inexplicably giving up all of his magic instead of just breaking the one spell that he cast that he didn't like anymore. And that's because if the average, if the public of the Elizabethan era saw, oh, you mean we were supposed to actually root for a wizard character? They would have flipped moral shit and Shakespeare might have been on trial. Well, maybe not him because he could have pulled some strings with the queen, but you get my point.
Okay, Nelson, gentlemen, it seems like the Cruella movie is going to make a whole generation of young women self-serving narcissistic sociopaths.
Well,
that depends.
and
I think you're kind of underselling the intelligence of
the average woman, and also that's the bit like saying the Joker movie is going to turn all young men into incels, which when the other side was making that exact argument, we flipped shit over it. So I have to once again apply my standards consistently, or I can't apply them at all.
Okay, Dawn, how about eating babies or burning them to death for our Lord Moloch? Do you support that?
That, as far as I know, is a meme and a scaremonger. It does not genuinely happen.
Ed Brewer, sorry, I'm trying to speed run these.
Yeah.
Ed Brewer, outrage equals ratings. This is known. Yeah.
Unfortunately, but I don't amplify my reactions to get ratings. I call it as closely as I can to how I see it, and the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. Which, like, again, for this podcast, a part of me kind of often tries to find things that aren't really on big notice, not to follow the trends, but more just find stuff that's kind of within our own wheelhouse. Like when we search for articles and stuff.
Yeah, it's more interesting if we get stuff that's going to be relevant to our particular interests, and also it's much more entertaining to watch us rage organically. So that's why we do what we do. Anyway, back to the article. We
got three more. Sorry, Ed Brewer, I believe these folks on both sides compromise the personal beliefs to stir outrage. Nelson, the gentleman, ball sacks, pearl necklaces, and okay, just some of
them. I think there are some men who are that hysterical and moralistic about their junk in the same way Helen Lovejoy and her like are with their pearls. So you're not wrong.
Obviously, the more a channel rakes in ad revenue, the more popular the channel is, and the more popular that channel is, the more visibility the channel has on YouTube. This creates an easy pipeline for alt-right radicalization.
Except if you knew anything about YouTube, you would know that these channels actively get demoted by the algorithm, specifically because of moralistic, hysterical complaints such as these, and people like you making points in articles like this.
Right. It's funny enough. See, it's funny because because most of the things like from certain people that I follow are just because like I'm scrolling through my recommended.
Yeah.
On my YouTube homepage, like on my phone, and I see a video there and I watch it and I think it's really cool, and I look at more videos of those people, and that's how I even got into Comicsgate in the first place, because that's when I started watching like some diversity in comics videos. Like it was on my recommended list somehow, I don't know how, and then I learned about like Comicsgate and stuff, and like it's kind of everything else really, because if that event didn't happen, kind of wouldn't have led to this,
Yeah, I was using YouTube to get caught up on comics, and yes, that occasionally included people like Comics Explained. Not particularly proud of that, but I got bored with Comics Explained, and I went searching for, surely there must be someone more organic to talk about this with other than just Linkara, because I do really like Linkara's videos, and he's stayed pretty consistently good for through the years, even though some of his other channel awesome contributors have gone off the deep end.
Mhm.
But I went looking and I found DNC, and then from there found Captain Cummings and Englentine, and that was right around the time he started doing the America Chavez videos. And in one of Gabby Rivera's America Chavez books, the D-list ripoff of the Grandmaster known as Arcade somehow got his hands on mindless ones and managed to make them act like referees. And I mentally exploded, because even Dormammu has difficulty controlling the mindless ones classically, because in the comics, he actually took the Dark Dimension over from a malevolent wizard who previously created the mindless ones, whose name I cannot remember at this moment. But that was the moment when Englentine and I basically met, because I went on a long ramble about how Arcade should not fucking have the mindless ones and how it was baffling. And his response to me and this long rant was basically, because it's Gabby Rivera and she is terrible. And the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. Hey Don.
Yeah.
You might want to check the private chat. I just texted something.
Okay. Oh, crap. Yeah, I need to blow my nose.
Mm-hmm. All right. While Don's doing that, I will read a little bit here, and the role of radicalization. Americans in particular typically describe radicalization as some covert operation that happens discreetly in a remote part of the Middle East. However, this narrative is dangerously misleading and typically racist.
I have things to say about that, and as soon as I finish blowing my nose, I will rant about
Right.
that.
Let me just finish that paragraph, I guess. Radicalization into extremist political views can happen anywhere and to anyone, and it can be as easy as watching a few YouTube videos. Yeah, so Ed Brewer, I was out of comics for years, then got into it again. I found 2 channels that reviewed a book I read, Chef Jack, for I Love Comics, and Professor Bill at Comic Book University. All right, cool, man. That's really cool. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about Chef Jack before. I don't know who that is. Like, is that supposed to be Englentine? Or...
No, Chef Jack is Englentine's brother.
Ah.
And he used to co-host the I Love Comics channel with him, but they kind of had a falling out-ish thing. and Chef Jack decided to start his own channel. And
Oh,
then Chef Jack had some health issues, and it made it harder for his channel to grow. Anyway, in regards to this whole radicalization issue, yes, I would agree that the concept of radicalization is not something that just happens in the Middle East. Wouldn't call it racist to say that it does, just misinformed. But since we're opening this radicalization Pandora's box of yours, have you ever once in your life considered that you and your ilk might be radicalizing people at all, ever? Given that you are pushing an explicit socio-political and moral message, and most of the people you are calling reactionary and radicalizing just advocate for the removal or the counter valent message of your own message. Just saying. Moving on.
right. Okay. Um, Dalton, Nelson Gentleman. Dalton, for claiming to be an expert on the occult, I'm sad to hear that you don't think there's still Moloch, Lucifer, worshipping asshats that still sacrifice babies and children to this day. To this day, there are.
No, Nelson. I've looked into this, and most of the allegations of that date back to a satirist by the name of Leo Taxel, who accused the 18th century Freemasons of doing that. But there was no evidence then, and the only reason why it made a comeback in the modern era, um, in terms of being a thing people worried about, is because in addition to all the other crazy shit Son of Sam did, he may have also experimented a little bit with what we in the business call the left-hand path. But outside of the pedophilic things that people in very rich positions are prone to doing, my suspicion is that they use the occult in the same way that they use everything, which is just as a cheap thrill to entertain themselves while they're busy doing other things. Because they don't have the intellectual or spiritual rigor to actually engage in these things deep enough to make it worthwhile. Most allegedly satanic killings or satanic cults are actually the result of psychologists implanting false memories into children via hypnosis, because most of the time the idea of memory retrieval via hypnosis or memory regression via hypnosis is actually kind of softcore brainwashing, because that's not how memories work.
Mhm. They don't advertise, says Nelson Gentleman.
Obviously not, but if you've ever seen Hollywood parties, you know that most of the time when they do genuinely risque shit, it's just as a cheap thrill. It's it it's not that I don't believe that some of the politicians and powerful people are corrupt enough to try something like that. I just don't think they take it seriously enough to bother. I think most of the powerful people in positions capable of doing things like that view the occult in the same way your average teenager fiddling with a Ouija board views the occult, i.e., as a fun, scary game to engage in, not as a not as a legitimate spiritual pastime. And you need to actually believe in some of the left-hand path shit in order to go that far, and they don't, because fundamentally they use these things as means to an end rather than as an end in themselves. The the only thing they do seem to believe in with any kind of sincerity is this kind of academic moral woo that we see in wokeness and social justice and all the rest of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've really seen in today's schools. Nelson, the gentleman. Fuck that. I've seen. Fuck that. I've talked to a witness. Sorry, fuck. Sorry, fuck. You don't know everything. Bullshit. Well, I guess you're working for him.
Nelson, you know better than that. I've done research. I've looked at the evidence. The evidence I found for it was not compelling and was taken out of context, and thus I find it incredibly unlikely. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I am saying the evidence that I have been presented by official sources on the matter is uncompelling, and therefore I find it hard to believe that these people engage in these practices. Mostly because these kind of practices would take skill and competence that I don't think these people have. I don't, for the most part, I don't believe in these conspiracies because I don't believe the people involved in them would be competent enough to actually be this conspiratorial. You saw what happened when they tried to steal the election. They're not good at keeping secrets, dude. They're not good at keeping extraterrestrial secrets. They're not good at keeping occult secrets, and they're not even good at keeping moral backstabbing, um, cooperating secrets. They're just not that good. They're not masterminds. They're just moralizing idiots for the most part.
But they don't know they don't have the competence.
Exactly, Ed.
Moving on. The Social Dilemma, a documentary by the Center of Humane Technology, provides an example of alt-right radicalization wherein a young man becomes imbued with right-wing extremist ideology after being subjected to YouTube's algorithm.
And what about the college students who are brainwashed into moralistic hysteria by critical theory and deconstructionism and postmodernism in every field that these fields can get their hands on? That's my first of all, I don't think there is currently such a thing as right-wing extremism in this sense, but even allowing for your own framework for a second, you are more guilty on this particular front than the people you are accusing. Because the people you are accusing, if they are successfully quote unquote radicalizing people, they are doing so inadvertently, whereas you people actually are attempting to train activists, as the majority of these activists will actively admit to, because they operate in a worldview where it's not considered a wrong thing to be a revolutionary activist, and in fact, they consider it a moral virtue to actively hold aloft their radical credentials as far as they can. And you'd think for all of their classist training, they would understand that the fact that the powers that be don't oppose them kind of means that they are the aristocracy, but never the fuck mind.
Mm-hmm. In the documentary, Goldaman Chazlat, a former YouTube engineer, explains that it worries me that an algorithm that I worked on is actually increasing polarization in society. But from the point of view of watch time, this polarization is extremely efficient at keeping people online. People think that the algorithm is designed to give them what they really want, only it's not. The algorithm is actually trying to find a few rabbit holes that are very powerful, trying to find which rabbit hole is the closest to your interest. And if you start watching one of those videos, then it will recommend it over and over again.
Except YouTube has gone out of its way to actively demote these kind of channels, and if you knew anything about YouTube, you would know that. And YouTube specifically said that they were doing exactly that because of moralistic arguments like this. Because once again, person who wrote this article, you think you're being edgy and creating an expose by writing this article, but all you're doing is flexing your aristocratic power over the people who have the gall to tell you, I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but you're not allowed to control everything in existence, especially not the arts.
Moving on.
Yes.
Okay. In other words, YouTube is designed to keep the viewer invested in extremist hate once they get started. It becomes clear that society is currently dealing with a perfect storm of highly effective technology building quicker than the average person can keep up with and organize political hate campaigns. These campaigns have been designed to exploit existing bigotry within society and the lack of education most people still have about the online spaces they spend so much time in. The result
Okay, so
is
what?
a fast-acting radicalization pipeline that occurs without people noticing it. Sorry, there's one sentence I had to finish it.
So what happens when I try to talk about men's rights issues? Oh, that's right. That's the prejudice and the bigotry and the human rights abuses that we're not allowed to talk about because narrative. And also, why aren't you bitching about ContraPoints? If you're so worried about people getting spun into extremist rabbit holes, why is it you only notice when the quote unquote right wing, which by the way, anti-social justice isn't right wing, anti-feminism isn't right wing, and anti-critical theory is not right wing necessarily either. I am a self-applied. I apply this label to myself. I am actually left wing. Brainstormer is a centrist. Neither one of us is particularly fond of classical traditional conservatism. I've made just as many arguments mocking tradcons as I have mocking willful deconstructionists, and I will continue to do so because my preferred approach is somewhere in the middle. We don't be moralistically right wing, we don't be moralistically left wing, we just let people alone in a populist libertarian sort of way. My solution isn't any kind of authoritarianism or any kind of moralism. My solution is pragmatism and humanism as opposed to moralism, and libertarianism and populism in place of authoritarianism. But you don't consider these to be valid options, so they don't even get added to the discussion. But if somebody gets thrown down the ContraPoints rabbit hole or the search rabbit hole or the Vosh rabbit hole, you don't notice because you consider them to be maybe a little bit misinformed, but at least morally on your side. So they don't get any complaints. But somebody says the wage gap doesn't exist, or the patriarchy as feminists imagine it doesn't exist, or women were not oppressed because they were women. They were usually oppressed because they filled some other box and the woman was added to it. Or men's rights and men's issues need to catch up with women's rights and women's issues, considering that we spent the previous century giving women more rights and privileges than we've ever given any class of people throughout human history, and yet we still cut the foreskins off of baby boys. But never the fuck mind. Yeah, moving on.
This is how the pipeline works. First, alt-right individuals who have already been radicalized from past organized hate movements such as Gamergate or Comicsgate establish a platform on YouTube. They sit in spaces with a highly accessible on ramp like pop culture film franchises or video games. Then they then gain a following by emotionally appealing to their tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of viewers, that they are being oppressed by a culture and society who wants to see them fail. They ignite fear that viewers are losing their culture to an other. Some YouTubers, including The Quartering, explicitly refer to this as the battle for culture.
Okay, you, sir, are othering these people right the fuck now. And by the way, the oppressor-oppressed dichotomy was brought into the discussion by your people. Because the basis for what is loosely referred to as identity politics is X demographic or X group within a demographic is being oppressed by the other, the oppressor, and therefore we need to equalize this by creating more representation, which is essentially the same argument the Nazis made about the Aryans versus the Jews, i.e., Jewish conspiracy, therefore let's even things out by advocating for more Aryan representation. And then boom, you have a genocide. Well, what exactly do you think you will be fomenting if this goes far enough, sir? What you appear to be doing is assuming that the people you're opposing operate in the same framework as you. Nobody claimed to be oppressed by these things. However, when they speak and they get nothing but hate in response to it, and YouTube as a institution sides with the people opposing these people, they do have something of an argument as to being censored, especially when you consider that the people doing the censoring are proud and self-avowed doing the censoring. That's the difference. That's the false equivalency you're making here. Because one side of the discussion wants no one to be censored. The other side of the discussion actively considers censoring the undesirable people to be a virtue and will obliviously admit to it in public because they consider it to be a virtue. So even if your oppressor-oppressed dichotomy made any fucking sense at all, which it doesn't, we have a situation where one side is advocating for universal humanity and the other side is advocating for censorship as a virtue against a group they consider to be undesirable because of their beliefs and ideas. If this were any other group in any other context in history, this would be extremely easy for you to point out that clearly the group advocating for universal application of principles is the correct one, and clearly the group advocating for censorship as a virtue is the aristocracy or the establishment or the powers that be. Pick whatever phrase you want, but suddenly, when you are the people in charge, when you are the aristocracy and the establishment, you can't countenance that anyone disagrees with you unless they actually are somehow the big scary boogeyman that is oppressing you, even though you have all of the institutions, all of the academia, and most of the moral frameworks. You morons.
Okay, so catching up the comments here, Nelson, the gentleman, makes me sad how much you are brainwashed by mainstream academia, Dalton. I forgive you for your weakness. I'm out. At Brewer, even if that's true, Dalton seems willing to defend his positions. Nelson, the gentleman, and the fact that you believe the media so easily is sad too. At Brewer, that is more than you can ask for in 2021.
Nelson, who advocates against mainstream academia any stronger than I do? I will I will gladly wait for you to provide me an example of anyone who advocates against mainstream academia more concisely or more fervently than I do. because you probably won't find one, at least not in the sphere of independent YouTube. Arguably Alex Jones, but the problem with Alex Jones is that his ideas are very seldom not coherent. And that therein lies the problem. Regardless of my anti-establishment beliefs, I maintain, and I insist on maintaining, that my beliefs are coherent. And that is my problem with the satanic conspiracy theory argument. It's the same as my problem with the feminist patriarchy argument. These conspiracy theories do not appear to be logically consistent or empirically accurate. And I don't care how much I might hate a group of people, I'm not going to accuse them of something that I find to be logically incoherent or empirically inaccurate. I'm going to criticize them for things that I can verifiably show and logically deduce that they have actually done or that they actually believe. And anything else will be excused from the discussion on the grounds that it is either incoherent or empirically false. I apologize if that bothers you, but I have to once again be consistent in my principles. And if you start telling me that some big shadowy conspiracy theory cabal is out there doing things, you had damn well better bring logically coherent arguments and lots of data to back it up. And so far I have seen none in regards to this satanic cabal. A pedophile cabal I will grant you, because there is actual evidence of that. Epstein is perfect evidence that there is some tendency among the high achieving people of civilization to screw children, and that's happened in other institutions as well, vis-a-vis the Catholic Church. So I find that to be unsurprising and entirely feasible. But a satanic cabal, I don't see evidence of, and I don't see logical arguments being made in the defense of. Therefore, I can't believe it.
Once viewers are locked into these networks, there are multiple rabbit holes that the viewer can be led down that can lead to increasingly extremist, misogynistic, racist, and fascist views.
Okay. Once again, feminism does not have a monopoly on women's rights, women's interests, or the idea of womanhood. Therefore, you can't just equate anti-feminism with misogyny. And most of your examples of misogyny throughout this article have been tied to your notion that feminism can do no wrong. Likewise, Black Lives Matter does not have a monopoly on racial interests or the rights of different ethnic groups. Therefore, you can't just call any opposition to Black Lives Matter racism. These are two different things. Because there isn't just a one-size-fits-all solution to these issues. Like I tried to explain to a person I know on Facebook once, I think the correct solution to most quote-unquote racial issues is fixing the classist aspects of them, because most modern-day race issues are not actually race issues, they are class issues. And even slavery, historically, was more of a class issue than a race issue. And the idea that we've strawmanned history to the point that we think every black person ever is descended from slaves and no person other than a black person has ever been a slave is stupid and wrong. So I have to advocate against it. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. For example, watching any Geeks and Gamers video on how white men are being shut out of Hollywood or how women are ruining pop culture can easily lead viewers to following the personal account of the Geeks and Gamer channel, D-Day Cobra. D-Day Cobra's channel is littered with radical right-wing videos that express support for Donald Trump's presidency and Trump's support of the Capitol insurrection. Wasn't really an insurrection. He also uses this channel to advance fascist ideology with videos titled "The Media is the Enemy of the People." Kind of is, though.
Okay. But, okay. This is the most backwards thing I have ever heard in my life. As much as I just argued with Nelson that you can't just go anti-establishment all the time if it's not coherent or empirically empirically defensible, it is worth noting that what you're describing there is the opposition to authority, not the support of authority. The media is an institution, and that institution, at least socially, has authority. Therefore, by definition, if you're questioning a institution with authority, you are being non-authoritarian. I'm not going to go so far as to say you're therefore being libertarian, but at the very least, questioning authority is usually non-authoritarian. And the fact that you can look at someone questioning the media and call it authoritarian means that, in your mind, person who wrote this article, the media is unquestionably valid and unquestionably the purveyors of truth, even though they personally don't even claim to be, because in modern-day journalism schools, you're taught that objective truth is not a thing, and that narrative is the only thing that matters, and that it's better to be a stenographer to power than question power. This is how backwards your worldview is. You can look at someone questioning an institution which has social authority and actual societal clout, and you can call the person questioning it a fascist rather than call the institution that insists on not being questioned fascist. Generally speaking, the word fascist is misused to mean any kind of authoritarianism, but social science or political science aside, if we're using fascism in its informal context of just authoritarian, it is categorically less authoritarian to question an institution with power than it is to not question an institution with power. And if you flip that, it is because you care more about authority and validity, quote unquote, than you do about logic and substance. You care so little about logic and substance, in fact, that you can actually flip the script and start calling the people who question the state media apparatus fascist, and the people who don't question it are somehow anti-fascist. Typically, the people who believe anything that Big Brother tells them are the people who've been brainwashed by the party. If I may make an Orwell reference. You may want to reevaluate your worldview if it's genuinely so backwards that you've gotten to the point where not only can you not question Big Brother, but the people who do are the problem. Moving on.
Actually, I don't know. Like, we've actually been doing this for a little over an hour now, so.
Yeah, we can move on.
Alright. Yeah, so we're stopped here in the middle of something, but yeah. Now we'll catch up in about 2 weeks. Because we need that amount of time to, like, recharge from this.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is from Insider.com. I sent this. LGBTQ characters of color are making animation history, but creatives of color can't escape the industry's discriminatory past. Full disclosure, I had found this like on a retweet of someone on Twitter. I did a quick skim of it, but I think I posted I suggested this like early on during last week. So, all right, this was it's written by Abby White and Kali Cheek, and published August 31st, 2021. Um, yeah. So I did not. I don't remember much of this, so this is going to be kind of going in blind here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm assuming the look I'm seeing Dalton have is one of very much regret since I read the title.
No, no, it's not related to the article. I'm regretful that we may have lost Nelson.
When creator Rad Seacrest and showrunner Bill Wolkoff pitched Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beast and the Age of Wonder Beast, both knew they wanted their story that follows a girl in search for her father in a post-apocalyptic Los Angeles to feature a relatable gay character.
Okay, but the key word there is not gay character. The key word there is relatable. And speaking as the gay one, hi, most social justice oriented gay characters are not relatable. In fact, they are mostly infuriating. So before you go into the we're fixing this with social justice portion of this, no, you're not. You are, in fact, doing nothing but making the problem worse.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Seacrest told Insider that the two saw there weren't these iconic Superman and Spider-Man archetypes very often as a gay person in media. A lot of times, you would be like villains or like someone who's comic relief.
Okay. That doesn't mean that you can't like the Supermans and Spider-Mans and so on, and that doesn't mean that gay people don't. This is the problem. The folks advocating for social justice do not speak on the behalf of the gay hive mind or the identitarian hive mind of any kind. There are gay people who nevertheless find Superman or Spider-Man to be awesome. Likewise, there are also gay people who have no problem liking the villains because villains can be awesome. Do you see? And there are people who read these kind of comics just to laugh, and I'm sure they don't have a problem with relating to the comic relief characters. What exactly are you complaining about, Abby?
And someone else, but
Yeah. Apologies, but I'm not sure how to pronounce the second person's name. And that's not because of any particular disdain for them. It's a unusual name for at least my part of the world.
mm-hmm. What they didn't know was that the pitch for Benson, the DreamWorks series, dorky but endearing, cool kid who befriends 13-year-old lead Kipo Oak, would make history. In January 2020, during the show's debut season, Benson became the first black lead character and only the second known animated kids character behind Canadian series 16 to identify themselves as gay in dialogue.
I mean, if we're counting movies as part of this discussion, Mitch from Paranorman has them beat by about 8 years. But how soon we forget.
Well,
And
16 I think came out before.
Paranorman.
Yeah.
It's possible, but even so, it's worth also noting that as far as subversions go, Mitch from Paranorman very much plays against type, so that should by rights get him more points.
Okay.
If you bothered to remember him, person who read this article.
The last salient moments historically go to white characters, with the Insider's database confirming the appearance of white LGBT characters as much as a decade earlier than LGBTQ characters of color in kids animation. Yeah, because at those times, literally, they were more about telling stories or just making cartoons for kids.
Yeah, and also, are you insinuating that because of their race, white gay people aren't gay enough? Because that appears to be the insinuation you're making. And as somebody whose first official relationship was with a black guy and lasted an entire year, I think if I showed this to my ex-boyfriend, he would laugh hysterically at you. And I know this because one time on date night, he and I sat there laughing our asses off at the problem with Apu, which made a morally hysterical argument about how Apu from The Simpsons was racist against certain people of color.
Mm-hmm. But also, it wasn't really glass ceiling. Honestly, I watched this series. I probably should get more into it. A few seasons have come out that I haven't watched yet. It's a good series too. I'll be honest. I did kind of skip the scene where he comes out like Benson. It didn't really change much for me.
I've never seen this show and don't know these characters, so I can't really judge much.
He's the cool guy. He's the cool guy, and kind of. I mean, all of them are kind of comedic relief in a sense when it depends on their interactions.
Mm-hmm.
So that the whole gay thing, is whatever.
Yeah,
Also, they're technically, it's this weird thing with like the coloration. Granted, it's the style of the show.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of looks purplish. That kind of purple thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they do with characters' skins sometimes. Oh, shit.
Okay, I don't know what happened. My phone glitched out again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving on.
Yep.
Okay. White people were allowed to be gay in a sense or be queer as an identifier, said Parvez China, a gay Punjabi actor and voice talent for several popular animated kids series. People see our color and ethnicity first before sexuality.
Oh, my dear, no one gives half of a fuck about either of these things unless you draw specific attention to them. Generally speaking, I wouldn't even consider being gay to be a particularly noteworthy qualifier. And again, speaking as the token gay one, and Brainstormer is a person of color, so we've got both of our bases covered there. But frankly, you shouldn't care much about either of these things, much less the fact they both coincide in your particular case.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm fine with the idea that characters can be gay, I do have the slight proviso that much like any other character trait or character quirk, they occur when the story or world or the character themselves call for them.
Yeah. And kind of to provide an example, I mean, I don't want to get too much into my own writing stuff. And Ed Brewer. Uh, did you want your heroes to be gay slash of color when you guys were growing up? Mainly, I just wanted them to be fucking heroes, which is something we kind of sorely need these days.
I
So,
just wanted some trippy cosmic metaphysical magic user type characters. Those were the kind of characters that I liked. Granted, I also wanted characters who were hot enough that I could imagine them in certain sexual situations, but that's a different story.
Ed Brewer, did you have any? Did you have role models you could identify with? Yeah, Spider-Man, Superman, uh, Ben 10, kinda. I mean, he was kind of an annoying brat when he first started off, but
Yeah.
you know,
Dr. Fate, Doctor Strange, a little bit John Constantine, although he was less inspirational or aspirational for me and more relatable because he was a fuck up, magically speaking, and I'm probably closer to that than I am the wise, unimpeachable magical sage. And in terms of to counterpoint the Ben 10 example, I really related to Gwen at least until she was revealed to be an Anodite, which is the stupidest fucking thing. But yeah, I don't object to the existence of Anodites per se, but how they're used is really annoying in the series. But yeah, I mostly was just interested in cool magic users. Although there were exceptions, like the Question. I really, really, really liked the Question from the first place I saw him was in the Justice League Unlimited cartoon. Although I think I got into the comics around the same time. Not sure which came first.
if you guys could do that, shouldn't others be able to do that too?
Yeah, again, as I was saying earlier, most people don't tether their sense of self-worth to their demographic and identity categories because most of the time what makes you a full-fledged well-rounded person is not your demographic information but your interests, skills, hobbies, and etc.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's kind of because I do writing. I create a lot of characters, often to a point of memeability, or like Don and I have like these inside jokes about like I create a lot of stories with a lot of characters and stuff.
You do. Usually at least one of those characters is going to end up being a Superman pastiche.
Yeah, but and Don and I talk a lot because he's kind of sort of my co-writer slash editor for a lot of these things.
I'm useful for him bouncing ideas off, and sometimes I'll tweak them slightly or offer a if you want to do this and this, well, how about we combine them by doing this?
Yeah.
Um,
So, and I've created a lot of characters that are that are diverse, so to speak.
yeah,
Um, and Don can testify to this. More often than not, that's more of just like kind of just an added thing.
yeah. It's almost like that characters should be beings in their own right and not um, means to an end or some kind of point scoring exercise or something.
Sorry, I'm just kind of tired.
I will
Uh,
say there were a couple of disabled characters in comics that I liked as a kid. Like I really liked Professor Xavier, but it was less to do with the fact that he was in a wheelchair and more to do with the fact that he compensated for being in a wheelchair with mental powers.
mm-hmm. Shall we?
Yep.
Although the industry is making strides to be truly inclusive, animation creatives of color who spoke to Insider said because those with lived experience are not in influential positions behind the scenes. On screen, many brown and black LGBTQ characters continue to be shown in ways that can be harmful to young viewers of color.
Okay, question. If we're all on board with this whole diversity and inclusion thing, what about representation of people with different worldviews, different philosophical ideas, different perspectives on different subject matters? What about that kind of diversity and inclusion? Or is it only the diversity of identities that we have, and in particular demographic identities that we have to hyper-focus on? Where is the Randian objectivist representation, or the Buddhist representation, or the occultist representation, or any of these count as something worthy of representation? Or is it only ever when it's tied to some explicitly demographic oriented variable that it becomes a candidate for possible inclusion or diversification?
Yep. The Insider's data shows LGBTQ characters of color and industry members are receiving disparate
Disparate.
treatment in animation. And there's a clip of Clifford Big Red Dog here. I don't know what it is. I don't want to click on it.
I'd rather not. I'm sure it's going to make me want to cringe and
Well,
seppuku myself with my own sword cane.
Yeah, it looks like an old one, like an old. To be honest, I don't think PBS does that in cartoons anymore.
I'm pretty sure they still do. They're making a live action movie on it.
If you're against me, you're for hate. End of story. Ed Brewer said. I think he's just summing up what you said.
Yeah, that appears to be the vibe generally.
That's limiting your storytelling potential, though.
It is. And also, people of various different demographic orientations can also be villainous, mistaken, misguided, or wrong. And that's the other thing. You can never, ever, in the modern zeitgeist, make one of these characters a villain. Otherwise, you're slandering all people of the same demographic, even though I would make the argument that by not allowing your characters to be villains, you're robbing them of half of the range of places for them to be in storytelling.
Damn it.
And also, being the villain can sometimes be awesome because villains get the best outfits, they get the best powers, they often get the best idiosyncrasies or mannerisms, and they, in a medium that involves songs, villains usually get the best songs.
Be prepared.
Or Friends on the Other Side, or Poor Unfortunate Souls, or Snuff Out the Light, which was going to be Yzma's villain song back when Emperor's New Groove was still Kingdom of the Sun. Which is a really badass song, and Eartha Kitt did actually record it, and you can find it on YouTube if you want to hear it.
What's it called again?
Snuff Out the Light.
I will look at that later. I did not know that.
Yeah. And initially, the story of Emperor's New Groove was going to be Yzma was going to be like the tribal shaman, and she was secretly going to be an evil sorceress, and she was going to bargain with a Incan death god to drain the sun of light so that she could stay young forever.
All right, shall we?
Yeah.
In its own analysis of 250 LGBTQ cartoon characters, the Insider found that the first LGBTQ characters of color debuted a full decade after the first white human character. Furthermore, only 10 out of just 70 identified people of color, including Black, American, or Alaskan, Indigenous, Latinx, Latino, Pacific Islander, and multicultural multiracial characters have leading roles. Okay, that doesn't really make sense though, because not every character is going to be a main character.
Yeah, unfortunately, the world requires some characters to be in the background.
Yeah, it's like
It's a sad fact, but not every story can revolve around every kind of character.
I mean, if you try to do an ensemble, but usually there is a leading character that drives everything forward.
And even then, there's only so large an ensemble cast can be before you've literally made every character that passes by a main character.
Yeah. Also, usually the main character of like an ensemble, or like the POV character or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is never the most interesting. Usually is the side characters that are the most interesting.
Yeah, because they have the power to steal the room and stand out. And usually the POV character is a naive simpleton who basically just goes wherever the plot needs him to go.
I mean, granted, Atlantis, the Lost Empire, did that really well and differently.
No, it did. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just saying,
God,
generally speaking, because the POV character is naive and a little bit of goofball, so that they can be introduced with the world alongside the audience. There are going to be more interesting and well-rounded characters around that character that are probably going to be more people's favorite. Like, as an example, in the Atlantis the Lost Empire, most people like one of the side characters a little bit better than Milo, even though Milo is the main driving force of the plot. Gotta say, I always liked the Italian dude what explodes all the things.
Oh, damn it. Mole? That's what they call him, I think.
No, that's
Oh, no, you're talking about
the
Vinny?
explosive expert dude. Yeah, there we go.
Is it Vinny? No, it's Vinny.
I think it might be Vinny, but everyone who's seen Atlantis the Lost Empire is now screaming at me in their heads, this is what the character's name is, Derp.
God, I love the scene where he like talked about the corsages and stuff. Where like his family owned the
Yeah. Atlantis the Lost Empire is an underrated masterpiece. We're all mostly familiar with this by now. And
those 90s Disney movies were some of the best in my opinion.
Yeah, especially Atlantis and its sister movie Treasure Planet, because they came out like one right after the other, and I kind of consider them to be.
My favorite Disney movie ever is Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay, so Ed Brewer. These folks propose a solution to the outrage, don't they? I mean, they aren't saying I'm outraged, fix it, are they? We'll have to read and find out. I doubt it, but still.
Mm-hmm.
A significant proportion of these characters lacked explicit racial specificity in their shows, featured fictional combinations of real-world cultures, and offered a mix of non-human racial metaphors, the latter of which many young children don't understand.
Okay,
again,
that's because they're not meant to be. That's because usually they're not meant to be racial metaphors. You're projecting that onto them.
And again, like there's context, like the context within the story of the show.
We've been over this 1,000 times, but elves are not Aryan, and orcs are not black.
That is still one of the stupidest things I've ever heard.
These races, fictional or otherwise, are representing themselves and are not meant to be allegorical or representing other racial groups in some abstract capacity, unless explicitly implied otherwise. As an example, in David Ayer's film Bright, it was very obvious that that orc stereotypes took black stereotypes to their furthest extreme, and elves took white stereotypes to their furthest extreme. But that's one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like that movie, is because it forced arbitrary socio-political woo where there didn't need to be any.
Mm-hmm. Moving on.
Yep.
For example, in one of her studies, Louise Mars, professor of communication science at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, found that kindergartners who watched an episode of Cliff the Red Dog featuring a three-legged dog did not translate the show's conversation around human disability and acceptance. Instead, the takeaway message to them was "Be nice to dogs with three legs," Mars told him that. Okay, and then those are kids, and therefore they look at it on surface level most of the time. I'm not trying to devalue a child, because often children are more smarter than most adults these days.
The out of the box thinking most children are capable of actually can be more useful than you think. But
watching a show, and like I'm guilty of this too, is often you just look at surface level because you're trying to enjoy something.
But more to the point, notice how outraged this person appears to be that they don't view things in abstract terms. This is the fundamental heart and core of the problem. These people cannot, for the life of them, understand how diegetic in-universe things can be more important or more substantive to people than the abstract implications they're trying to crowbar into things. And also, if I can't say what I would have thought of this when I was a kid, but even if I was smart enough to get some sort of abstract meaning from it, and you like put a gun to my head and made me say which abstract meaning I got from it, my thinking would have been an animal rights related type thing rather than a disabilities rights thing. And for the record, I have spastic diaplegic cerebral palsy. So being disabled is sort of at the forefront of my mind by necessity, whether I like it or not. But I still probably wouldn't have picked up on that either.
Mm-hmm. No. Moving on.
Yeah, sorry. I heard my buddy pick some of his stuff up because he left a bunch of stuff with me because he had to run to work as we were coming back today.
Mm-hmm.
So I got momentarily distracted by my friend Nick coming in and showing up.
Although ability and race aren't the same, it hints that animation's less than direct approach to racial LGBTQ representation can be confusing to kids.
Or they just don't care enough to process it. You do know it's a perfectly acceptable option not to care, right? And again, we run into the problem of you insist on making the non-diegetic, abstract meanings more important than the substantive in-universe meanings. And you wonder why people get confused or angry with you as a result of this. Because most of the time, when people look at media, they care about the characters in the media because of the character's own merits or the world's own merits, not because of the abstract woo implications of whatever's going on in universe. And it is in my humble opinion, they are more right to do this than the critical theorists are to insist on abstract meanings instead of diegetic ones. Because it's more important to care about characters because the character's awesome or worlds because the worlds are awesome than it is to get the heavy-handed socio-political or moral context that you're being jammed through your head like Phineas Gage with a railroad spike. Moving on. Unless you left.
Yeah, moving on. Sorry, I was stretching and kind of gone, so I muted.
Okay.
It also points to a larger problem lurking behind the scenes, driven by who was making creative decisions about how person of color LGBTQ characters are represented. Okay, as a person of color or representation, I'm good. I just want good fucking stories.
Yep. And I'd much rather have one character that I can actually relate to as a gay disabled person than 5 characters who make me actually want to shoot them.
Steven
Like
Universe.
I'm seriously on the verge of developing Rick and Morty style multiverse technology just to go to these characters' universes and shoot them. That is how annoying these characters are starting to get. Because they're not characters in their own right. They are avatars of whatever identity the writer needs to enforce in this particular instance.
Hey, Rick's technically like omnisexual or something.
Well,
So,
I mean, he did fuck a planet, so I'm going with omnisexual, yes.
one of my favorite omnisexual characters is Captain Jack Harkness of the new Doctor Who universe.
I believe he's just pansexual, but I could be wrong.
He gets flirty with any living thing, honestly. So,
Yeah, he has screwed enough aliens to give Captain Kirk a run for his money, so maybe omnisexual. But we've never seen him screw a non-humanoid alien, so until then, I'm going with just pansexual.
okay, fair enough. Yeah, but
And if there are examples of that in Torchwood or something, please feel free to tell me, people in the audience.
but yeah, I brought up Rick because he's an anime character, and most of the time we don't really. I think a lot of people assume he's straight, which I mean,
he
kind of is, but
also fucked the planet.
so he fucked. Granted, it was female, which I don't know how that. I don't want to know how that works. Actually, I don't. I think it's too terrifying to think about.
He also fucked the hive mind, so there's that too.
Yeah.
And apparently considers it a stable enough relationship to have had an on and get off again thing with said hive mind. So there's that.
It's actually really surprising.
And it also is worth noting that Rick's last name is Sanchez. So even though we don't really see any Latino skin pigmentation in him, if you want to squint at it, I guess you could consider Rick from Rick and Morty. Person of color LGBT representation.
I think we can all agree, though, is that Jerry's a fuckhead.
Well, both Rick and Jerry are fuckheads. They're both idiots. They're just idiots in different ways.
Yeah.
Jerry, because he falls in line with norms and tries to find meaning in the mundane that isn't there. And Rick, because he's smart enough to realize that norms and mundane human bullshit contains no meaning, but rather than find an alternative source of meaning, given that he has access to an entire multiverse.
Which, by the way, last week got even bigger due to the whole fact that.
Oh God! Last week's season 5 has been hit or miss so far for me, but the last 3 episodes, the Bird Person one and the 2-part finale, goddamn. But point being, rather than find a higher source of meaning than mundane norms, Rick defaults to nihilism and absurdism instead and just goes, there is none, despite having an entire multiverse and entire lifetimes to explore it. He doesn't even bother looking, and that is why I have.
I think that is also because of what happened to him. Because what we saw in the finale. Anyway.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, still not a big Rick and Morty fan though, even from the last couple episodes.
I like it, but I admit that it has problems, and so it's perfectly legitimate not to.
It's just so goddamn cynical. Specifically with the characters, I mean. Like most of the characters.
Yeah, I think it's going for a House style thing of, even though House is the smartest person in the room, he's still wrong existentially speaking. And even if that's not what the writers are going for, that appears to be the objective nature of the storytelling. So yeah. But that's my problem with Rick though, is because he has all the resources to find meaning if he wants to bother to look for it, but instead of bothering, he just defaults to nihilism and absurdism as though that's the intellectually defensible position.
Mm-hmm. Anyway. Similar to the lack of explicit identification around LGBTQ characters' orientations, many brown and black LGBTQ characters continue to exist ambiguously on screen, frequently lacking regional nuances and cultural distinctiveness, or being voiced by actors who aren't of the same race. Oh my god, are we still on that shit? Okay, so if we have a white character that's voiced by a black guy, is that an issue? Okay, because again, if we're going to hold that thing with like the voice actors for like Cleveland and Apu,
yeah,
shouldn't we hold it the same?
Yeah, universal application of principles can be a massive son of a bitch, but it's a thing.
Yeah, and again, like ambiguousness is like, do you really need to be like? People don't need to be hit over the head with a character, like a thing that makes up a character, when it's not really important to the story.
And also, there is such a thing as letting your audience make up their own damn minds instead of being a interventionist god about it, writers.
Right. It's just
You don't need to control every little thing about your universe, because quite frankly, I think we need to bring back the notion from ancient Greece that the creation is actually slightly more important than the person that creates it. And in my opinion, as a creative person, I would much rather the things I create manage to be more important than me than otherwise.
Ed Brewer, Keith David could do my voice in the cartoon. Oh yeah, Keith David is fucking awesome. He played Spawn in the '90s HBO animated Spawn series.
I'm not sure who I would want to voice me if I was in an animated thing.
I'd voice myself.
I mean, I'm assuming in this hypothetical that it is an option, but
I'd find a way.
I think James Marsters, honestly.
Marsters. Why does that name sound familiar?
Spike from Buffy, voice of Harry Dresden in the Dresden Files audiobooks.
Honestly, probably.
And also Zamasu on DBZ.
Honestly, probably the voice, the guy who does a lot of the voices for like the Beast War cartoons, like Rat Trap, Dinobots, and stuff. Can't remember his name, and I feel bad though because he's a really great actor.
Yeah. I do know that if ever a movie is made about my life and that movie requires a narrator, either Z Frank or Morgan Freeman.
Anyway,
because those are the two most correct answers.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we?
Yes.
Uh, white passing narrative is what I call it. Tanaka Scott, a black gender fluid writer. No, Tanaka Stotts, a black gender fluid writer who's worked on Craig of the Creek and Steven Universe Future, told Insider. It's usually where the narrative is written in a way that it's white passing enough to get past your executives and the powers that be.
You are the powers that be. You are writing this in a well-respected internet forum for a mainstream media website. You are the powers that be. I'm sick of explaining this to you, but you need to countenance the idea that you won in the 90s. Because you keep acting as though you are still the poor put upon rebels, despite having HR and PR departments the world over, most of academia, a position in every corporation via HR and PR departments, social medias of all kinds, or at least the mainstream social media platforms, and high positions in basically every art industry you can imagine. You guys need to understand sooner or later that you are the establishment. Hopefully that will finally get it through your head. The power you have comes with a certain degree of responsibility. And you need to stop acting like the poor put upon rebels. Because you haven't been the poor put upon rebels since the 90s and
Scott
early 2000s at the latest.
Scott McNeil, that's who I was thinking about.
Ah.
The guy who voices like Dinobot and Rat Trap in the Beast Wars show. Also Silver Bolt, it was like one of my favorite characters actually. Either him or Dante Bosco, because I feel like he could get close to my actual voice. So
You do sound a lot like Dante Bosco. I don't know to what degree I sound like James Marsters. I just think that if I must be voiced by someone other than myself, then in an animated form, Marsters would do a good job. And he could do a lot of different voices. So although if I'm entirely honest, he'd probably use the same voice he uses for Waldo Butters for me, which I'm mostly okay with. So yeah.
moving on.
Yeah.
May Cat, a queer Asian American writer on Young Justice and Marvel Spider-Man, told Insider that when shows aren't run or written by people of color, characters exist purely as surface decoration, and race representation goes very similarly to queer representation, where it's just enough to have them there.
When you don't write actual characters' personalities and interests for your characters, every character is just window dressing.
Okay. Full disclosure here. Since they have a clip here and they brought up Young Justice, right?
Yep.
Favorite character. Well, I have actually a lot of favorite characters specifically from like the first two seasons. Third season, we can get into that a bit. But yeah, one of my favorite characters was Calder Wrong, the Aqua Lad.
Uh-huh.
He was a really interesting guy, and granted, I would have loved to see more, because they did that whole 5 years thing, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Like I do find it weird that they do the whole time skips in between seasons, where we don't really see a lot of development for the characters or development.
I would have preferred actually seeing the transition from point A to point B, or if they wanted to cut forward, cutting forward and then being like a several years earlier or several weeks earlier kind of thing, like do a smash cut forward and then go back to explain how it happened.
Yeah.
I forget what that specific writing trick is called. Is why I'm
yeah, I forget it too, but I know what you're talking about. But,
like in movies where they show a character's dead and then the narration starts and it's like, you're probably wondering how I got here, and then they cut to the events of the actual movie.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. But yeah, like still like all the characters are really cool and it was very engaging story mostly.
Yeah.
Like my favorite episode of like season 1 was the aftermath episode, like after the failsafe episode, where basically
Mm-hmm.
the alien invasion happened and it was a no-win scenario and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the aftermath where it's basically a lot of fucking therapy.
Yeah.
Because God, do those kids need therapy.
All the therapy.
That is going on a poster or something.
Presumably the same therapist that Ray from Ghostbusters went to between movies. Because Ray from Ghostbusters needed all the therapy between movies.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, and like talking about season 3. Granted, I didn't really want to watch it much from all I had seen, specifically from the style change they had done for like the art style, where like they were matching the New 52 movies a bit too much.
I saw a clip of the episode where Zatanna is able to spend a day with Zatara, and for some reason, the power of the helm has aged him rather than prolonging his life. And I groaned and didn't watch it.
Yeah. I'm again, and really, we're not. They made a whole big deal about it when it happened, but they made Calder. I guess people said he was gay, but I assume they just made him bisexual more so. Cause we covered this a while back,
Mm-hmm.
a long while back. I can't remember when, but we covered it.
Yeah. Who is his male significant other then? I've never actually looked
I
into
don't
it.
remember because it never really went anywhere.
Oh, they didn't. Oh, I hope they didn't do the thing where they call a character gay and then don't even show us their significant other.
No, they did. Like they showed a gay kiss and all on the show. It's just like I don't remember anything of significance happening with that.
Aw.
And also, the thing is, like, it's trying to match a character in the comics that's not Calder Rom either. Like, there's an Aqualad that is in the comics that is like a kid from basically like Aquaman, but like a kid from like I don't know, was it Miami or something?
It sounds plausible. I'm not familiar with this character off the top of my head, but
I don't
if
either. Because again, I'm
if,
not.
if a half Atlantean is going to come from anywhere, my money would be on the tropical coastal places, so probably Miami.
Yeah. So they're changing an already established character who's got a big following himself into a character that was based off that character when he was first introduced in the early 2010s, and changing him up to match the character from the comics. That again, it's a confusing thing and stupid all the way around. So anyway,
Yep.
when you have these characters that don't have their cultural identity, there is an unspoken, implicit destructive basis that occurs. That this behavior is the correct behavior and this behavior is inevitably white, Kat said. There's so much wrong with that.
First of all, generally speaking, you people don't actually talk about skin color when you talk about whiteness. You mean a particular set of ideas or a particular set of values. That's where we get the idea of multiracial whiteness from, or internalizing whiteness.
Yeah.
And generally, the things you refer to as whiteness are some variation on the roots of Western culture going back either to the Anglosphere or to Greco-Roman era, and you generally group in things like meritocracy, hard work, and so on into that. And
But also, like, again, it's weird because, like, especially when, like, you're doing a story of characters in a different world that may be based off certain things in the real world, cultures and stuff, but are completely its own thing.
yeah,
Again, with Avatar: The Last Airbender,
yeah,
it's clearly based on various points of Middle East, well, Asian cultures.
yeah, Far Eastern cultures.
Yeah, like
Like
Fire Nation's Japan, Earth Kingdom is China.
the Water Nations are the Inuit and or Eskimos, quote unquote. And the air nomads are very obviously Tibetan or Nepalese because Buddhism reference.
Mm-hmm. But generally they're not beat for beat those representations of those nations.
No, they created their own individual culture that makes sense within the world, and then promptly forgot about it when they did Korra, but that's a whole other conversation.
We've already gone into that many times, man. So
yeah, Korra's just took everything that was beautiful about the first show and undid it mostly.
it had good ideas.
It just was very lopsided in the way it executed them.
Yeah. It isn't teaching you to embrace a part of yourself. It's teaching you that that part of yourself doesn't deserve to be on television or doesn't exist beyond your home. What the fuck?
Yeah.
How the fuck do you look at something like that?
An example would be helpful here. What parts of you are you feeling like you should repress? Because you haven't provided any examples, and therefore it's very hard to either confirm or deny your proposed premise.
Right. Like, again, Young Justice. Calderon. I liked him because he was a young man trying to be a leader for his team. Again, specifically in season 1.
And if we want to talk about culture, Calderon's culture is primarily Atlantean, not black. Like his black, by which I mean his blackness is not a key feature of his personality, whereas his understanding of Atlantean culture very much is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not disputing black culture or anything. I'm just saying, based on the personality and interests of Calderon, the fact that he's Atlantean is far more important to him than his skin color. Probably because he grew up in Atlantis, where the racial tensions that human beings have wouldn't exist or would exist in a different form.
Mm. Research conducted by Brad Bond, an associate professor researching media psychology at the University of San Diego, echoed Kat's sentiment around media representation. Oh my god. If somebody like you is not on screen, Bond said, then ultimately what message that sends is that you're unimportant. Okay, hi. Latino here. Primarily Latino. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. And not just any Latino, an inner city Latino, which gives you extra points.
Yeah. Granted, I'm not in in California or anything, thank God.
We would be doing a crowd fund to get you out of there if you ever were.
Right, but yeah, I've not really seen a lot of Latino characters. And again, most characters I like are either like kind of white or really black.
Uh-huh.
But ultimately, it's not the skin color that makes me endeared towards them.
Right. And
like the favorite my favorite superhero, well, anti-hero, I guess, growing up was Spawn. Like, he was kind of the first superhero I really got into.
Ironically, sort of Jinx, because the first comic I ever remember somebody buying for me was the Batman Spawn crossover.
I actually
Back,
I had a friend in middle school who actually had those comics. But that was kind of shortly before I started getting into comics, so
ah,
yeah.
shame.
Fun
But
fact. Sorry,
yeah,
no, it's like it was
go
just
ahead.
like,
Sorry, go ahead.
fun fact. Uh, there was a time when I was in high school. I think it was either my sophomore or junior year, where I would grab a comic, and when I'm not doing work or something in my classes, I just pull it out and read it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people actually wanted to read the comic I was reading. Well, graphic novel at least.
I don't think I ever read a comic in school, or brought it from home to read. That I mostly did on my own time, and
No, I
usually,
did it on my own time when I wasn't busy, like when I finished something early
no,
there.
no, I know. I mean, I did it when I was at home rather than ever bring it. I don't know why I didn't bring any comics into school. I think mostly because, for a while I read comics digitally, or I looked up different synopses online before reading them digitally. It took me a while before I could actually own a bunch of them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at any rate, thing I wanted to say about the cacophony of bullshit we just read there. Funny thing about what you just said, Doctor
Bond,
whomever,
Bond.
Doctor Doctor Vaughn. You do realize that seeing somebody like you, quote unquote, causes a question of priorities, i.e., if you don't care about your demographic information, but you do care about your interests, for example, then you're going to find somebody who doesn't look like you, quote unquote, but actually behaves like you more relatable than someone who just looks like you. For example, um, as I've previously alluded to, I have spastic diplegic cerebral palsy. Um, for the first 2 or 3 years when I was in elementary school, I used a wheelchair, and from about fifth grade onwards, I started using a walker. It was a pain in the ass to switch at first, but I did it. Um, and by your metric, that would mean that I would relate to disabled characters, full stop. And there were a few disabled characters that I liked, um, like for example, Professor Charles Xavier. But that was less because he had a disability and more that he used his mind to compensate for it rather than giving in to the need to change. Because I've always resonated with the idea from X-Men 3, which is it's a really bad place to pull from, but um, something that I always found relatable about X-Men 3 is the notion of we don't need a cure. And then, of course, Jean's famous line of, Logan is saying, we'll fix it, we'll fix it, we'll fix it. And Jean, or I guess the Phoenix in Jean's body, says, I don't want to fix it. That's always been my life philosophy. I shouldn't need to fuck around and acquiesce to your standards to function. I should be able to function on my own terms. But that's neither here nor there. Um, but the getting back to what I was saying, getting back to my point. By your logic, I should relate to every disabled character, but the occasional, Charles Xavier notwithstanding, I don't, because most characters who are disabled have a tendency of making that their entire identity, their entire personhood is bound up in the fact that they are disabled in some way. In particular, the comic version of Freddie Freeman is absolutely insufferable because he's basically just a blank slate, morally, or he's a blank slate upbeat character whose disability doesn't even follow him into his superpowered form. Um, the movie version of Freddie Freeman is far more relatable because he's a snarky asshole who uses dry humor to deal with situations and is quite insightful about life and shit, and also a massive geek. I much more relate to movie Freddie Freeman than I do comic Freddie Freeman because comic Freddie Freeman has nothing to relate to or actively annoys me. Um, However, as a example of what I was just talking about the priorities of people being what makes the difference here, I am also a practicing occultist, and therefore I find it much easier to relate to magic user characters, and I like seeing representation of magic user characters. If you put a gun to my head and said, what is more important to you, the fact that you're disabled or the fact that you're an occultist would win every single time. Because I prioritize the aspect of my identity that is magic and occultism over my disability, even though my disability has more objective impact on my life because no matter what I do, I'm going to have to deal with my disability all my life. But it's less indicative of who I am as a person than my occultism is, or even my status as a massive, massive nerd is. My geekery is far more important to me than my disability as well.
Tom.
And it's the personal priorities of the people you're talking about that are going to determine what they find to be like them. It doesn't matter how many demographic boxes they check. If they don't find those parts of themselves to be important, then they're not going to relate to characters that share that checkbox check. They're going to relate to characters who share their interests, hobbies, personality quirks, backgrounds, maybe like life backgrounds, or even like value systems. It's much easier to relate to characters who share your value system rather than your identity.
Mm. Shall we?
Yep.
Animation industry creatives who spoke to insiders said they are seeing more efforts to hire creatives of color, but that there are still gaps with creatively influential positions like writers and showrunners. There was a show that happened to have a Latina character and a couple of other diverse characters, but the writer's room was entirely white. Latinx and animation co-founder Brian Dimas, who didn't identify the show by name, told Insider.
Okay, did these white writers ask anyone who was a person of color for their input while they were doing it? Because if so, then this doesn't matter. Were they generally empathic and able to put themselves into perspectives not their own? If so, then this doesn't matter. Or were they writing the characters just as characters whose demographic information was largely incidental? Because if so, this doesn't matter. But you've completely erased the possibility of any of these three situations. In your mind, people who look different or act different can't ever understand or relate to anyone who's different from them. And I fundamentally disagree with that. Brainstormer and I are very different people. Very, very different people. And I'm not just talking identity wise. But at the same time, we have been friends for going on 3 years. And I defy you to say that either of us has an issue understanding the other. Mostly because
The only issue I have with him is, and it's just the weirdest thing I know about him, is that he doesn't like sandwiches. And besides grilled cheese, of course. I mean, he's not a monster, but still.
and just for the record, that is a running gag and an inside joke, as a demonstration of the fact that we understand each other.
Yeah, everything else is like, I mean, the whole bisexual thing, that's inconsequential to me judging him as a friend. The occultist thing is really cool, in my opinion.
And not to toot my own horn here, but it has come in handy when you're writing magic systems. So
Yeah,
I mean,
and actually, it really has been. Oh, God, I think I shot my circulatory system with that sneeze.
Yeah, I have a terrible feeling that if I sneeze, my entire sinus cavity is just going to come rolling out of my nose.
Oh God. Anyway, yeah, it just really depends on whether or not the show is good or not. Not just for the representation, but
Yeah.
like the characters, the story, and all that.
And if a show has universal appeal, regardless of the identity of the characters, then large groups of people in all categories can relate to it.
Hmm. Shall we?
Yes.
Throughout the life of the series, around 52-ish episodes, I don't think they ever had a person of color that was a writer on that show, other than the one of the executive producers and some of the production crew.
Well, the executive producer has seniority over a lot of the writers, so right there is representation enough if we're going from a practical perspective.
Yeah, that's really weird because like, yeah, like executive producer usually has say over a lot of things.
So you've got an executive producer and you're still complaining. How much further does it need to go?
Okay, yeah, if Rick Sanchez of Rick and Morty, like that show was created by white guys, no one seems to have a problem at all about that show. I mean, I have a problem, but that's more on its
Well, it's
material.
on like writing grounds and character grounds people have, but
Yeah.
that's going to be the case with every show, especially shows that try to be deliberately edgy and push buttons,
Um.
which Rick and Morty does do a lot.
Well, also it's just like the thing is like the creators just want to be episodic more so than and that's a personal preference of mine. You know me. I prefer like long form storytelling and stuff.
Storylines, yes.
Yeah. So,
It seems like the fan base is getting there as well, because the general consensus among the fandom recently is that the three best episodes of season 5 were the plot thread centric ones.
yeah. Well, don't get me wrong. I don't mind episodic. It's just like
It's got to amount to something eventually.
yeah. Anyway, Demos said that shows are gradually moving away from having white writers writing for black characters or Asian characters or Latino characters. I, Latino, don't really give a shit.
I just
Just want good fucking characters, you know?
Yeah, I just prefer no ideological meddling and prioritizing the art over the people making it, perhaps.
A dynamic that has long been present in animated kids series. The okay, one of my favorite characters from one of the best shows in the '90s was a Latina character from Gargoyles. God, her name.
Aliza Maza.
Thank you. I don't know why, but her name escaped me almost immediately as I was thinking of her.
Yeah, Gargoyles kicks ass and is basically Disney's answer to Batman the Animated Series, but with magic.
And Gargoyles.
Yes, which are also awesome. I have several of them. I own like 6 or 7 gargoyles now.
Which kind of makes me think if I pulled inspiration from that for a certain project. Dome knows which one I'm talking about.
But no, I didn't. It just was one of those happy coincidence things.
No,
Still,
I meant me.
gargoyles are awesome.
I meant me.
Ah.
Yeah. Amid this shift, TV series are also leaning more into hiring people of color as work as creative consultants, an industry practice that dates back to the 70s for black creatives, according to Christopher P. Lehman. Uh, Le, Le, Lehman. author of the colored cartoon Black presentation in American animated short films. Still, that too can come with its own baggage. Okay, here's the thing: if you start hiring people just because they're black, which we've already, or person of color or LGBTQ,
that is instrumentalizing and pandering and also belittling their role and their importance. So
that, and also you're not getting the best of the best to help create a show.
yeah, you're not getting people with the power of perspective or the ability, skills at writing. You're just going, we need the token black or token gay or token whatever demographic stamp of approval on this. So get one randomly, and also throwing this out there, this completely erases the fact that certain people within a demographic can have I don't know, this thing called individuality
Also, one of my
and disagree with each other.
a guy who was a comic book writer who created a pretty great cast of characters in the '90s by making his own, comic book publishing. Dwayne McDuffie helped build the DC animated universe with, in the 2000s, with Bruce Timm and Paul Dini.
Yep. And kicked ass while he did it.
Yeah. And it had none. Well, okay. For Milestone, it had a little bit about being black, but that at the time that made sense.
Yeah.
Still great stories though.
It didn't impede his ability at storytelling at all. And it's not like he belittled the non-black characters whenever they would cross over. I mean, how? Static's best friend was a white nerdy guy named Richie.
That was actually in the cartoon. That character was created for the cartoon, not the.
Well, fair play.
Which I actually find surprising. Also, apparently Richie is supposed to be gay. It's never confirmed or anything, but
I didn't know that, but that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, consensus wise, and kind of looking at it, if I were to rewatch it and try to look for.
Yeah, he makes a few gaydars go off.
Well, it's also just because he never really seemed interested in any girls, which whatever. Something I get.
I just assumed he was busy.
Yeah, I mean, the dude,
being a superhero and shit.
Yeah, well, at first helping a superhero who's his best friend and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, he was Static's equivalent to Q or Lucius Fox, so he did much like Kato for the Green Hornet. He kind of did most of the work. No offense to Virgil.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. All right. Being asked to provide culturally specific feedback on characters, dialogue, and other elements of the show for white creatives is tricky when communities aren't monoliths. Several writers of color told insiders keep their names anonymous out of fear of industry retaliation.
In other words, or to put it more bluntly than you want to put it, there is no black, or there aren't identity hive minds. People within these demographics are individuals capable of having individual lives, and what's more, they can disagree with each other. Or are you going to tell me that the creators of BLM and Jesse Lee Peterson get along perfectly well, or that Van Jones and Ben Carson get along perfectly well together? Because I would enjoy a lot of popcorn if I had to watch that particular discussion.
Right. One creator who also didn't want to be named described it as a feeling like a janitor on a series.
Yeah, you're basically pandering to these demographics by putting token representation of things in there. And it's making people who are doing it feel instrumentalized and objectified. Whoops.
A lot longer than I expected. When kids' animation is going through growing pains around its LGBTQ and racial representation. Okay, the racial representation is kind of a stretch simply because there have been a lot of characters and stuff for like the last, I don't know, 40 or so years, maybe even longer.
I mean, patient zero for the comic book genre in the modern age, for most people, was Blade.
Movie wise,
Yeah. So,
and again, first ever comic I really got into. Well, okay, that's not true. I read a Superman comic that got me into superheroes. Spider-Man kind of cemented my love for superheroes, like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie. And then as I started looking more into it, Spawn kind of became my favorite. And again, dude's a black man. Granted, you can't really tell because his skin is melted off.
yeah.
But
where is the Hellspawn burn victim representation? God damn it! I'm being cheeky, but if we really honestly want to believe that only characters with a particular or only people with a particular perspective can write certain characters, then doesn't that mean we need to minimize it down until we have as close as possible a carbon copy of every character to write them?
right.
Is that how far we're following this rabbit hole down?
I mean, okay, granted, I'm not gonna lie, I mostly write Optimus generally because I am an optimist.
Uh-huh.
But I think I diversify their means of optimism and their thoughts of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just as an example of like how to do this. Like even if you're to write characters of similar beliefs as you can there's still room to change it up.
Yeah.
There are creatives on shows and in the industry who are ahead of the curve in changing the industry's long history of exclusion and erasure.
What about the inclusion and erasure of different worldviews and different perspectives and different philosophies?
Oh, those don't count because everyone has the same opinions and thoughts.
Yeah,
or supposed to anyway.
Yeah, this is the disturbing thing. It's not even any of the racializing or the moralizing or any of that. It's that you would rather a world with 1,001 different demographics where everyone agreed to the same worldview than a world where everyone looked the same but had like different worldviews, let alone a world where people within the same demographic can disagree with each other and have different worldviews to each other.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Heralded since its debut for its racial diversity on and off screen, Craig of the Creek is one of the top 10 most LGBTQ inclusive shows on Insider's database. Cartoon Network series stars 3 kids, including Craig, its black male lead, as they explore and go on adventures around a local creek. I haven't checked it out because it's not really.
I've never heard of it until now. I don't have anything against it.
No, neither do I. I haven't checked it out because everything I've seen, it's like one of those things like where you see it, it's just not really for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like some movies and stuff, it's just like you see it and you just kind of think, I don't think it's bad or good or anything.
Not my thing.
Yeah.
I don't have the perspective to judge this because I just don't have enough point of reference for it.
Yeah. The writing team is led by Jeff Trammell, who told Insider that the show features a room of 40 plus people on it. all with different backgrounds and different experiences, who are willing to share those experiences. Okay, that sounds like a very cramped room, not gonna lie.
Yeah, and what happens when they disagree with each other? Oh, wait, they all share the same worldview. Never mind.
Tramel, who's been the only person of color in rooms before and knows how heavy that feeling can be, said it was important that his show was different. Oh my god. Really?
Why is your demographic that important to you? Generally speaking, demographic information isn't that important to people. I don't walk or roll into a room and go, I'm the only disabled person here, I'm the only occultist here, I'm the only gay person here. Oh, woe is me. I don't do that. I get excited a little bit when another gay person is in a room because that, depending on the person, it might result in some kind of relationship. But, and I do fanboy a little bit when I find somebody else who's an occultist just because it's not that common, but I don't feel aggrieved when other people like live different lives and have different interests than me.
I
I just feel excited when I find a point of common ground with somebody. Like everyone else in the fucking world, regardless of demographic.
I
Because
I don't
interest hobbies and skills and etc. are more indicative of a person's personhood than their demographic information is or ever will be. Unless you are an incredibly vacant, boring person who only sees themselves as an avatar of their demographic. At which point I start feeling bad for you. Because that's just sad to be such an empty vessel that all you are is your demographic.
or not.
Yep.
Because our room is open, it never feels like you're the one representative, he added. Okay, does it really matter that fucking much? Shouldn't what matter is that you're contributing to the creation of a project?
And also, why must you take that mantle onto yourself? Why must you appoint yourself the one representative of a demographic? And again, you pointed out earlier that demographics aren't monoliths, and I pointed out earlier that the people involved in these demographics are individuals who are capable of disagreeing even vehemently with each other. So even if you take upon yourself that you are the one representative of a given demographic, what do you spontaneously develop multiple personality disorders so you can accommodate as many varying perspectives as possible? Or do you just give your personal perspective more weight by attaching the entire zeitgeist of your identity to it? I'm betting it's the second one. I'm betting you go, I'm more important because I speak for all of my demographic instead of I speak for all my demographics, so I need to be as open as possible to as many different perspectives as possible. Because if you believe this shit, the second one there would at least be like consistent and advisable with your ideas. I would still disagree with you, and I would still find it a little bit weird, but it would at least be an attempt to serve your demographic rather than having the weight and clout of your demographic only ever used to serve your own opportunistic ends. But I'm betting 99% of the time it's just that first one. You just give your own perspective more weight by saying, I speak for all of the X, therefore my opinion matters more than yours. Rather than just my single individual opinion is worth listening to because it has like intellectual honesty and clarity and something worthwhile about it, which is generally why I listen to people if I find them to be like worthwhile contributors to the conversation.
Hello.
Uh-huh.
That was an invitation for me to say hello, right?
Yeah, I was setting it up because
Okay.
you tried to earlier and I kind of steamrolled you, so I'm gonna give you another chance to.
Moving on because we only got a little bit left. Then we can move on to the trailers.
Yay.
When it came to staffing OKKO, Let's Be Heroes.
Oh, God.
I've seen a bit of it. I could take it. Like I'm on the fence about it. I don't think it's bad or anything.
I've only seen one episode of OKKO, and it was an extremely heavy-handed gun control allegory episode.
Really?
Yeah. The episode in question is called Skeleton Remotes, where a con man showed up in town and started passing out skeleton remotes that if you zapped somebody with would turn them into a skeleton. And the main character was really, really off-put by the skeleton remotes, even though they didn't actually make anyone die or make their lives any harder. It just turned them from a human into a skeleton. And it was I think it was very obviously supposed to be a gun control allegory.
I don't know how to feel about it. I don't really care because most modern stuff today kind of sucks. So
Yeah. But then again, I've only seen that one episode, so maybe it was just the one extremely forced maybe it was their equivalent to what used to be called a very special episode, quote unquote. And I'm judging the show too harshly, but as a point of reference, OKKO makes me groan because of that episode.
when it came to staffing OKKO, Let's Be Heroes, Ian Jones Corti avoided an industry habit of relying on a network of people who are trusted and often brought in. Instead of hiring creatives from his last project onto his new show, Jones said his team prioritized finding diverse talent with whom they weren't familiar. Okay, so by diverse talent, I'm willing to accept that on the basis of actual merit and like where they came from, like like people who worked on like shows, like maybe live action stuff or
Yeah.
superhero stuff, or
Yeah.
even and guys who've worked on anime overseas and stuff.
Yeah. Did you consider the quality of the people's work at all, or did you just we need someone to fill this box, that box, the other box, and
But also respect for not doing the whole like just having a bunch of group of friends work on a show. I mean, like I get it, and I'm fine with that, and I would do that from time to time. But I would prefer trying to find new talent so we don't like become stale or repetitive in a project.
I mean, sometimes people work together all the time because they just work really well off of each other. Cough.
Yeah, no, I agree, but again, I'm willing to take the chance. It's just like again, like to a point, you could kind of become stagnant with your stuff if you stay in the same.
I mean that's true, but that has nothing to do with diversity in the way I think they're meaning it.
Yeah, no, true. It's just like again, I was just voicing my opinions on that, what was mentioned and all. Like again, if he was hiring new talent for the sake of like making sure like the project he's working on.
Yeah, if he was bringing in new blood for the sake of new blood or creativity, that would be one thing. But it's diversity, sacrificed it all on the altar of diversity.
Anyway, moving on.
Yep.
We tried to do as many open calls for tests as we could. Oh, sorry. The studio had a database, and we just sort of cold emailed everyone. He said we would look up their stuff and be like, "Oh, that seems good. Let's guess this person if they want to come in." Others in the industry are more direct in forwarding directories of writers in animation to studio recruiters, such as Demas. As a result of those efforts, Demas believes there's a next wave that's a lot more diverse, including more representation of Latino culture and not just a certain audience of it, like Mexican and Mexican American or Day of the Dead focus. Okay, get Guillermo del Toro on your animation stuff then.
Yeah, what the fuck is wrong with Day of the Dead, by the way? Day of the Dead's awesome.
Dude, one of my favorite episodes of like centered around Day of the Dead was the LT Gray episode. If anyone remembers that.
Yes, I remember LT Gray.
That was a great show.
It was a pretty good show. I'm not gonna lie.
I wish it kind of got a little more serialized, instead of just being kind of one-off adventures.
Yeah, I kind of wish more episodes of it had been like the movie, where they were being a little bit more epic. But I admit to liking LT Gray. It does make me laugh that you liked LT Gray as much as you did because it's funny, but
Oh, you racist bastard.
yeah, but I just it annoys me that apparently a lot of Hispanic writers have a problem writing Day of the Dead episodes when you consider that that's an attempt to kind of give an olive branch to them, and it's also just because Day of the Dead is
I mean,
cool.
look, I could understand if it's solely the only reason why they're brought onto a project to write that episode. I get that.
Yeah, that might be a little annoying, but
But
I don't understand the aversion people seem to have to writing like
I mean,
culture
granted, I
specific.
haven't celebrated Day of the Dead. I kind of want to I want to, but I've been mostly busy with like Halloween and stuff. So
Well, I mean they're right next door to each other, and they're kind of or Day of the Dead takes place on November 2nd is kind of
there's
meant
also
to be a
there is
continuation.
I'm not
Hmm?
really near a place that really celebrates it much. So
Hmm.
it's just like it's a whole.
I just throw I just throw the sugar skulls along the side of my already existent Halloween decorations. Although I have a bunch of sugar skulls that I just keep on my shelves year round because sugar skulls are awesome
Mhm. Yeah.
and I like skulls.
Dead isn't really like Day of the Dead is like a very important holiday to certain, I believe, Latino cultures.
Yeah.
Mainly because it is mainly just remembering and
Yeah.
uh, honoring the family that has passed. And honestly, part of me kind of
Yeah.
wants to do that.
It's the ancestor specific variant of like Halloween lore,
Yeah.
effectively. And yes, I'm aware I'm oversimplifying that for the sake of
No,
flippancy.
I mean, yeah, but it's just like, it's like I don't get the. That makes no sense to me. Like specifically, like if we're talking about a Latino-centered show, in a way, you kind of have to incorporate things that are specific to the brand of Latino culture that is being shown in
And
project.
Day of the Dead is a very big deal, and it's already closely tied to Halloween, so it's an easy sell for the normies who are less educated on it.
Anyway, shall we?
Yep.
In the meantime, Stotts said that creatives like themselves in leadership positions and with hiring power are trying to do what the industry historically has failed to accomplish. What I can do is make sure that when I hire people or when I'm looking at characters that are being created, I'm creating them for a very specific reason, which is that it's not a bingo card. It's literally what I've lived, Stott said. That
I
is
mean, I can sort of.
yes
I
and
can,
no. It's
I can sort of give him credit for part of that,
her.
or her rather. Sorry. I'm very tired because the weekend, while fun, cleaned me right the fuck out, both energy wise and financially. Because sword canes and a couple of the other things that I bought while there were not cheap, and finding them took a lot of energy out of me. Now on to the trailers.
Right. Okay, so the first one is one I sent, and again, I said this to him before stream is I'm really surprised that he wanted to cover this one. This is the Injustice official trailer. Banana?
Banana.
No.
Imagine meeting you here, Lewis.
This is a priority call to all Justice League members. A woman is missing.
She's one of ours. Her name is Lois Lane.
It's kind of, I don't know. It's like, is it kind of quiet?
I think it's supposed to be dramatic, so it's supposed to be quiet.
Well, I also have I had kind of turned down before. Just 'cause,
Okay.
like, listening to something else that was kind of tiring. But
Mm-hmm.
so if I remember correctly, this is kind of made from the same studio that does like those Mortal Kombat animated movies.
Yes.
I like the art style, probably a little more than for the Mortal Kombat stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because it just has that comic book look to it.
Mm-hmm.
And full disclosure, and like I think I've said this many times before on this podcast, is I don't really like the Injustice story.
No, we've had many conversations about our criticisms of it. That's part of the reason why I covered
Kind
it.
of the surface level of things. Like there's a YouTuber who covers a lot of like NetherRealm stuff. The NetherRealm is like the guys who do Mortal Kombat and Injustice.
Mm-hmm.
Called the Fourth Snake. I've recommended him before. Really great YouTuber. I recommend checking out his stuff. He's British, so he always talks with a real. He has a real. He's got a funny British voice. I can't. That's the best way I can describe it. But yeah, he's talked about it as well, better than I probably ever could. But it's more so just the lack of consistency and work put into the story. Because, not gonna lie, more often than not, it does seem a little. What's the word?
Forced.
Forced edginess.
Try hard.
Yeah, thank you.
Is the Joker voice actor Mark Hamill? It sounds a lot like Mark Hamill, but I don't know.
No, it is not. I actually looked at like the behind the scenes stuff for it. I can't remember who the actor is, but it's a great voice.
Mm.
Funny enough, the guy who played Green Arrow in Smallville voices Superman. In this.
Stephen Amell.
No,
Or no.
Justin Hartley.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, he's voicing Superman. It's really cool to me. Yeah, and again, like the story itself on its base premise is interesting, man, because DC has never really had a superhero civil war kind of deal compared to Marvel. And it's interesting mainly because like it's a because with Civil War it was tackling a lot of things like the actual original comic story that tackled a lot of things that were happening at the time in time because Marvel is more connected to the real world than DC.
Mm-hmm.
And by real world I mean our world, obviously, not to.
Yeah.
But and it's always like this thing with like I don't know. It's like making Superman evil. Like I made my voice my opinion on this a lot, but to just kind of reiterate, it doesn't make sense for the character to go bad when something that this story says has happened.
Mm-hmm. And it seems very much like just another excuse to not Right, Superman, like Superman.
But also the fact that it's a Batman villain that pushes Superman over the edge, and not like someone like Lex Luthor or even Darkseid that
Hmm.
pushes Superman over the edge. It just
I mean, the Joker has antagonized everybody before, but it still would. I think it'd be more impactful if it was maybe Bizarro even.
unintentionally because like how his brain works.
Yeah, because that could have the fact that Bizarro looks like Superman could even like um underscore the fact that he blames himself and who he's really angry at is himself if this were to ever happen.
Yeah,
I mean, if we're going to play this ball where it lies,
but
though. I mean,
okay, sorry.
the Joker knows no jurisdiction, so I mean, I've never
Right,
had a
like,
huge issue with it.
he's always been focused with like Batman and like trying to break Batman. So it would have made sense if Batman was the villain, but I don't. It's always this weird thing with like
I think it is supposed to indirectly fuck with Batman because it's teehee. I'm gonna take your friend who you admire because he's so pure and noble, and I'm gonna break him just to fuck with you, kind of thing.
it's still a stretch and very stupid though.
It's kind of like if somebody wanted to screw with me, they might come after you to break you because they
Okay,
know
I
that
get
would
that.
be
I
more.
get that. And that's fair. Because no one could really break me. Let's be honest on that.
I'm knocking on wood like a motherfucker because I don't even want to tempt fate that much.
Right. But again, my point being is there's always this weird thing is like people don't want to make Batman the villain, like truly the villain. Like we get alterations, like the Dark Knight's metal thing.
Batman Who Laughs and all that.
Yeah, alternate versions of Batman. We don't get like a mainline, like legit Bruce Wayne that is the villain, or at least a fallen hero.
Because Batman fanboys simply will not have it. Batman must always be edgy and misunderstood if he's ever in the wrong because he's Bat God and he can do no wrong.
And again, like you and I literally had this discussion like a few weeks ago about it. Is if anyone's gonna be a fucking fascist tyrannical leader trying to be
It's
basically
going to be the guy who's hyper paranoid and has contingency plans up the ass
yeah.
to basically enslave people more powerful than him.
Plus, like he literally deals with the whole concept of should capital punishment be a legit thing?
Mm-hmm.
Should you take the law into your own? Like, should you kill a very bad person? Like, he literally deals with that every single day. He's Batman.
Yeah, I think the main reason why Superman was used because on a very surface level sense, it's more scary if Superman breaks because he has all the power. Never mind all the Batman contingencies.
I'm calling bullshit on that.
Yeah.
Okay, if anyone has all the power in the world, it's fucking Batman. Okay,
Because
he has
he
unlimited amount of money, all the time in the world. He is a paranoid bastard. He is a man who always constantly seeks for control of things, and not to mention, he could probably kill the entire Justice League in about a matter of minutes.
I think it would take at least a day to get all of them, but yeah, he'd get all of them eventually. With the exception of maybe a Dr. Fate or someone. Although
My point
yeah.
still stands.
Yeah, but
Like, believe it or not,
not to mention he has an anti-Superman mech suit, so there's that.
Also, kryptonite up the ass as well.
Well, I was more saying like if we're afraid of Superman because he has all the power, then what's to stop Batman from putting the mech suit on again?
Right.
Because then he would have roughly equivalent powers to Superman, and that if Superman's powers are so scary because reasons, then surely a guy who's one suit of power armor away from having the powers of Superman is also scary.
Right. Also, the thing is, like, also the series did Wonder Woman, like the Injustice series did Wonder Woman dirty.
Mm.
Like, I know we
think-
focused a lot on Batman and Superman,
hmm
but they basically made Wonder Woman an evil bitch, like straight up evil bitch.
Yeah. I think this one might do it better just because of how Wonder Woman reacted to hearing that Lois was in danger. I think they might humanize her a little bit more successfully here.
Right. It's just like in the games and in the comics, you have totally different writing teams, thus making it very different.
hmm
Yeah, it just again, it doesn't make sense to me. Like again, I could, like she's a warrior, I get that, but the thing with Wonder
She's
Woman,
not only a warrior, and warrior has never been the most important part of who she is.
no, she if anything, her greatest strength and also weakness is like the same with Superman, is like her compassion, her heart. Granted, she doesn't really show a lot of compassion towards her enemies, often. Like
Then
she,
again, her enemies are usually gods or the very next best thing to gods.
or
So
mad or super mad scientists that are legit sociopaths. So
Mhm.
anyway, also, did anyone not notice that like Lois was a redhead in this?
Was she? Wait, what?
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, redhead. It's surprising. I mean, she could be
Okay.
modeled after her voice actress. I'm not entirely sure.
Maybe, but Amy Adams notwithstanding, Lois has always been extremely dark-haired, like brunette or raven-haired.
I think it would have been really weird if she was blonde. Actually, like redhead, like
I don't know. I'm just chalking it up to the voice actress, maybe.
yeah. Or they're modeling after Amy Adams. Maybe, I don't know.
She's not redhead.
Yeah, she is.
Is she?
Oh my, really? Really?
I've never noticed.
Okay, it's weird. Anyway, banana.
Banana.
It's Lois Lane.
Lois.
My masterpiece.
Brace yourself!
You took his
How?
wife. You took his unborn child and his city. Why?
How? You could have done that. You could have done that around Lois like 5 minutes ago. Would have been really useful.
No, are you making a joke? Because they literally weren't there.
If they were close enough to be in danger of the blast, they could have done something to prevent the explosion.
They were not close.
I'm annoyed now because
Okay, it's a whole thing. Like, honestly, the Injustice series never made sense at all. So,
that ring-a-ding seemed to work just fine while you were protecting yourself. You might have spared the entire human race this whole rigmarole. You just thought about it a little bit more. God damn it.
they wouldn't have had a story.
Well, but if the story requires out of character stupidity to work, then it's not.
Oh, clearly you haven't played the games.
No, I know the games are the same way. It's just it annoys me when the only reason that a story happens is because characters are dumb in a very out of character way. If you can't make the character in their right mind and have the story still work, then maybe find a different setup for the story or tell it differently, please.
Again, this would have made sense if it was Gotham and Batman killed Joker.
No, I think you'd still need to keep the he loses someone tragic because
Well,
it
yeah, no, Gordon, like a lot of the Bat family and shit is just like,
or maybe the entire Bat family.
I honestly would have kept like me with Batwoman.
Like he ties them all to train tracks and then boom or something.
It's a nuke, dude. It's a fucking nuke.
Right, but still
Track.
point being, get them all in some place where they're not going to move. And I say this because
Who's
most of
gonna
the Bat.
outrun, besides the Flash, who can outrun a fucking nuke blast in Gotham?
Well, nobody, but that's not my point. My point is if you don't restrain half of the Bat family, they're gonna kick your ass before you can even set off the nuke.
You also realize Joker's a criminal mastermind and plays the Bat family for fools many a time. Even Batman, many a time.
I'm aware of that, but still, for practical reasons, you're going to want to make sure most of them are incapacitated in order to make this happen.
I don't know. It's just like,
And also the Joker has a cartoonish sense of humor, so he probably would do something as stupid as tying them all to train tracks or something.
like I get what you're saying, but also like not the entire Bat family, but enough. Like I mean, I'm sure if you like killed Dick Grayson, it would send Bruce over the edge. Along
Dick
with
and
Gotham City.
well, Dick and maybe Catwoman. I feel like it needs to be at least one of both. It needs to be one of both genders. If
I remember correctly from the comics, Joker did also shoot Jimmy Olsen in the head before involving Lois in his scheme to corrupt Superman.
Yes. So multiple people. Plus, the only reason why I say it would take more than just one Robin is because he's lost one or he's lost a couple of them before.
Right,
like
but I don't want Jason Todd to die in this scenario of Injustice.
Because he dies all the fucking time, and
well, that, and also it just makes sense because he's like, again, he's the one that's always challenged Bruce to make that call, to be willing to kill when killing is necessary.
Yeah, and if he's still around after this, then he can be the devil on Bruce's shoulder. Would be
ironically enough. I think if we're to play this scenario out, like he would start off as that, but again, Jason goes through a lot of character development in the comics. Granted, they keep fucking retroactively retconning that shit.
Yeah, well,
he's not like at first it was kind of a black and white murder. Like if you do wrong, you kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, he was trying to also like take over Gotham's underworld, but to control, But
yep.
in recent installments of Jason's story, he's kind of more like he doesn't kill every criminal he comes in contact with. He kills those that need to die.
As you do.
Yeah. I'm sure we can all agree that if Batman had killed Joker a long time ago, there would be a lot less death in Gotham. Like the coroners and the funeral homes would not be as busy as they are.
Yeah. I mean, if he really wanted to do a bunch of good for the people, then just wait until Arkham is full up and tell all the like researchers and guards not to come in one day and just nuke that bastard thing.
Honestly, I'm more surprised. Like again, realistically, there's no way Joker could be pleaded as insanity doing all the things he's done. There's no way that would stick.
I mean,
on death row. Realistically.
The Gotham legal system is fucked beyond all reckoning.
No, I get that, but realistically, like if we're to take this in realistic terms, if there was a Joker in real life, there is no way the insanity plea would save him.
No, but it's not really that they save. It's not really that it saves him. It's just that the only facility they have to contain super criminals is Arkham, and for whatever reason, it's like a revolving door.
Right, and like, okay, I could get that they could escape through some ingenious way, like do a prison break Arkham style.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
or like Christmas with the Joker.
Right, but logically, and this is just a bit of like my gripes on the world building within the comics.
Mm-hmm.
There should be at least some type of funding made in governments to build state-of-the-art prison housing facilities for super criminals.
I
Like,
mean,
there are places like Belle Rev and Blackgate Penitentiary and stuff like that. But
sorry, the dog randomly showed up in the room for some reason. I'm gonna have to deal with. Go out, dog. Go.
right, but
Go, dog. Yeah.
but like.
1 second.
Yeah, but like Arkham is like a revolving door in a decrepit mental institution. Like you'd think, like even Bruce Wayne, and like I think he has, but
Yeah. Once again, Batman would do more good for the city just by using his resources better.
not to say that he doesn't do any good as Batman. Obviously, it's just like
No, but it's like if you just upgraded Arkham so that the people who went there could stay there, it would do a lot more good for things.
like that. It's weird. Like Jupiter's Legacy actually did this really well. With like the Supermax prison.
Right. Excuse me. I have to deal with the dog. Go, dog. Get. Oh. Dog. Go. Okay. Okay, I've returned back to the index discussion.
Mm-hmm.
No, the dog has been dealt with.
Right. It's just like again, and that's just my gripe. That's kind of one of my mini gripes of like the whole world building within like Marvel and DC is like you expect with all the things that have happened timeline wise within the universes that society
Especially
and technology and stuff.
Especially if we consider that everything happens within whatever the new set time frame is. I think it's 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
If every previous comic happened in 10 years, then fuck me running, Bruce. Upgrade Arkham.
Yeah, you just expect like things to really change and be better. And like again, Jupiter's Legacy did this really well with like the Supermax, where like it didn't really seem like any of the villains ever like escaped or anything, and like there was heavily armed guards and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, like it looked like a fortified place that no one could really break out of.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because again, superpowered beings, you kind of need that extra layer of defense.
Yeah.
Anyway, also, the thing is, like, and again, like, this is the Joker we're talking about, and he often just does things for the lulz and all.
Uh-huh.
But I've always wondered, it's like, why would he do something this big? Like, again, it's just like, to me, it would have made sense if kind of borrowing something from, like, from like I think it was Batman Who Laughs with like the version of the Joker in the Dark Multiverse that made the Batman Who Laughs.
Mm-hmm.
He was dying of like cancer or something, and he wanted to go out with like this big bang of sorts.
Well, I'm pretty sure if you asked him, he'd say something along the lines of, "In order to keep them laughing, you have to keep escalating the joke."
No,
Or
yeah,
something.
okay, fair enough. It's just like, to me, it's always like been this thing of like Joker. If he's going out on the biggest stage he can. So like nuking Gotham and basically breaking Batman psychologically by killing many people that he loves and cares about just makes a lot of sense. Like
Yeah.
if he's going to go out, he's taking the whole town with him.
Especially if, and I just thought of this, what if he somehow hides the nuke on his body, and then when he goes to Arkham, he sets it off while he's in his cell in Arkham?
Dalton, do you know how big a nuke has to be to destroy an entire city? Like, not super big, but you can't smuggle that into Arkham Asylum.
We've established, though, that they have the worst security in the history of not just prisons but mental institutions.
Okay.
In fact, that could be something. That could be something he says, like right as he sets it off, like, in a better institution they wouldn't have let me keep this, but boom.
Alright, fair enough. We got like 20 seconds left, shall we?
Yep. Banana.
For all these years, Betsy, you really need reasons from me?
What happened to Metropolis can never be allowed to occur again.
You'll throw away everything the Justice League stands for.
The point to the clown, I mean, asking him his reasons does kind of gild the lily at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta understand. Like, again, it's gonna be better. It's probably gonna be better than like the comics and the games by taking influence from them. But that's not really saying much on the fact that both kind of weren't great. Anyway,
hopefully it'll at least be a good edit or a good version of this, and it'll do it better than the games and comics have. And if not, we can always rail at it. And anyway, Matrix 4. I hate the feeling of having to sneeze without actually knowing when I'm going to sneeze. It's really freaking annoying.
Alright, sorry, now it's just like ad and all, so. Yeah, so I sent this, but I wasn't really sure if we were going to cover it or not. Dawn wanted to cover it.
Yeah, I've got things to say.
I kind of do too, but probably not to the extent Dawn does.
I really like the Matrix movies. Yes, not only even the sequels, but I actually think the second Matrix movie is the best one. In fact, I might watch it later when we're done with this.
Okay. Shall we, Banana?
We shall, Banana, and this is the one time I wish I knew how to say banana in binary code, but it would take for freaking ever.
Like, if we could, I'm not saying it.
Yeah, it's too long in binary.
Oh shit. Anyway, yeah, Banana.
Thomas, you seem particularly triggered right now. Can you tell me what happened?
I've had Dreams that are just dreams.
Okay. I will say this. From like like Dawn and I had a brief discussion on this like on Thursday, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like the look of the camera, like how the shots are. Like what I mean is like the cameras they're using now compared to the original.
Well, yeah, it's set in the next iteration of the Matrix after the end of Matrix Revolutions.
Mm-hmm. Also, and again, like this is just me. Again, this is me like being a director and stuff. It's just like I like the look of the camera. Like it's obviously like a better quality camera. Like I think they used film originally, and like nothing against film and all. It's just like I don't know. This looks. I like the clearer image and stuff. You know.
I mean, it has been 20 plus years, so
Yeah. So it's like digital, like advancement in like filmmaking and stuff, like the equipment and stuff. Obviously, it's just also like the colors pop more instead of just having that like. I mean, like nothing. Again, I don't dislike the Matrix movies. I can just take them or leave them. Really, I just like this is just for me. It's like I like the color in it. Just because we get so many bland movies and stuff.
But yeah, the color that they had to destroy the world for, or the color that they had to destroy the world 7 times for.
Right. Yeah. Do you have anything to say?
No, not at this point. I did cringe a little bit when the word "triggered" came up, but I think see, I'm of two minds on this because I know for a fact that the Wachowski siblings hate how the term "red pill" has been used since the movies came out, and I have the worst feeling that they might try to passive aggressively take the red pill away from the internet using this movie as a means to do so.
Right. I mean, the word
Because-
like I'm sure it is a word that has been used in certain cases in psychology, actually. So
Yeah, no, triggered is a psychological term, and he is in a therapist's office, so it does kind of make sense for it to be used. But I'm wondering to what degree we're supposed to find that funny, and to what degree we're supposed to, like, be appalled because, like, I'm wondering if it was used in the script specifically to trigger the kinds of people who do use the term "red pill," of which I am one. So, yeah.
I mean, I could take it or leave it because honestly, I'm just looking at it like face value on the fact that he's in a
Yeah.
therapist's office. He said triggered and stuff. So
Yeah,
I feel like
I will. Yeah, I will say also that the visual effects parts don't look as nice as they did in the originals yet.
yeah.
Um,
I did want to. I could kind of get what you're saying. Is like I feel like. Well, again, this is probably just so it's a trailer, and like we all know how trailers are, and like they often don't.
yeah, and also this is the first trailer, so all the visual effects isn't done yet.
Yeah, but I'm also of the mindset. I'm also of the things like there could be less effort put into it. Unfortunately, like I don't want to say that, but it could be a possibility.
Yeah,
And, like,
I was
like the visual effects artists who do this stuff. It's just like there was a lot. Like when you look in the behind the scenes stuff of the Matrix.
They knew they were making something that completely blew the old paradigm out of the water when they did it. And I was kind of hoping that this would be an attempt to not just recapture what the old ones did, but take it that next step further.
Yeah.
And they didn't really do that.
There's like this scene there. Yeah, this scene here. Like, I don't know. It's just like the weirdest thing to me is like how they were able to really like in the first movie specifically, you know, that's where I'm gonna. That was the one I watched the most.
Mm-hmm.
How they were able to really like blend practical with CGI
Mm-hmm.
specifically, I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like there's with this, it's kind of, and you know, everyone like for 2 generations now, people have gotten so used to CGI and stuff, specifically like last decade or so.
Yeah. And if they're gonna use it, this would be the one movie where an overabundance of CGI would be okay.
Yeah, but nothing here has that tangibility, you know.
Well, yeah, it all looks half finished, and again, that might well be because it's the first trailer and they don't have all the CGI done yet. But I'm gonna say to The Matrix 4 what I said to Eternals and what I said to Shang-Chi. If you don't have the visual effects ready, just wait 2 months for the visual effects to be done and then release the trailer. Especially with all the COVID delays, you can get away with doing that. Yeah, and I think this is a reference to the Merovingian, who's supposed to be the main villain of the movie. And I'm glad to see the Merovingians back.
So I'm just trying to find the frame that I was at. Oh yeah, there we go.
Banana.
Banana.
Am I crazy? We don't use that word in here.
Bless you. Again, I like how cinematic it looks. You know, so to speak. You know what I mean. Like it looks. It kind of like how like the just the high quality of the image, I guess.
Mhm.
You know, like it kind of reminds me of Joker minus the artisticness of it.
I mean, it's actually utilizing color decently, which is fine, I guess.
Yeah.
But I really wish that wasn't as high bar of it as it is. Like we're giving the movie compliments for hitting the bare minimum, and that bothers me.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's just again like a lot of movies the last decade or so have kind of been very low bar, so to speak. So
Yeah, but even in the context of the Wachowskis' other films, I'm not really impressed with this yet because they're the people who did
Speed Racer.
well that, but also Jupiter Ascending and Cloud Atlas. So clearly they know about. They're still trying to push the boundaries. I'm just wondering when am I gonna see when am I gonna get that wow factor in Matrix 4 that we got 20 years ago in the Matrix trilogy?
Yeah, fair enough.
But again, it's early days yet, and the impressive stuff is probably still rendering.
Banana.
Banana.
Have we met? One pill makes you larger, and one pill makes you small. And the ones that mother gives you.
I love the use of Ask Alice in this trailer. It's so perfect for the Matrix. I could cry.
I actually like again. There are some like creative shots in here, obviously. Like to me, as like a filmmaker and stuff, it's just like
Mhm.
I don't know. I like this shot a lot. Just like the upside. like not well, I guess not upside down, but it's like one of those shots that make you think, how did they do it?
Mm.
Because a part of me thinks, obviously, just plain old visual effects, like they painted out the camera where this empty spot is, but a part of me really wants it to be kind of a, I don't know, kind of like a practical effect
Mm-hmm.
somehow.
With actual camera work instead of CGI.
But yeah, so far I don't really have much to say. Like, funny enough, I do like the song. I just since the trailer itself isn't gripping as much as I thought it would.
Yeah, the song is by far the best part of the trailer so far.
Shall we?
Yep, banana.
Banana.
Don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall.
Time to fly.
And maybe chasing rabbits.
I forgot that there was a lot of Alice in Wonderland symbology.
Yeah. You stay in Wonderland and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. I imagine right now you're feeling a little bit like Alice going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I totally. Again, it's been a long time since I've watched The Matrix, so mainly the things I remember of The Matrix are from Robot Chicken sketches.
And to be fair, they dropped most of the Alice stuff in the sequels. They went more for like a
Philosophy and stuff, which is fine.
They went more for like a Platonic or even like Greek mythological stuff, because the Merovingian and Persephone are obviously supposed to be a version of Hades and Persephone from a previous iteration of the Matrix, which is why werewolves and ghosts work for them.
Also, Morpheus.
I'm not sure that was
Morpheus?
intentional.
Was it Morpheus or Orpheus? I can't remember.
It's Morpheus, but I'm like 80% sure that wasn't supposed to reference anything in particular.
Well, no, it's just like, again, it's a nod at least.
Well, they picked it because it sounded cool, but with like the Merovingian and the Oracle and stuff, they made more Greek philosophical and mythological. Like the Oracle's "Know Thyself" sign is literally straight up from the sign that was supposed to be hanging over the door of the Oracle of Delphi. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Banana.
Yep.
If you want the truth, Neo,
Yeah, we should have said red
you're going
pill
to have
this
to follow
time.
me.
God damn it.
The only thing that matters to you is still here. I know it's why you're still fighting and why you will never give up. You don't know me. No?
Minor controversy. Apparently, Lawrence Fishburne wasn't even asked to return this time, and he is pissed.
Really? That's...
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, he tweeted out the other day, "Ask why I'm not in the new Matrix movie, because they never even asked me, and I'm mad about, and I would have totally done it, so I'm mad about it."
That's
basically
surprising.
Yeah, and I can understand why he's pissed. So on the behalf of Lawrence Fishburne, I'm at least tentatively pissed. Nothing personal against the guy who's playing New Morpheus. It's just if you had asked and he had said no, that would have been one thing. But number one, you didn't ask. Number two, he very obviously wanted to at least be given the option. And number three, from what I remember of interviews I've seen with Lawrence Fishburne, dude loves both The Matrix and the fact that he was in The Matrix. So why didn't you just ask? Could have had another version of the original back, but Oh well.
Super weird, man.
Yep. And I stand with Lawrence Fishburne on this point. Red pill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I realized about a second into the previous clip that we totally should have just gone with red pill this time. So red pill.
Red pill. What was the song you called this again?
Ask Alice is what it's called.
Hold on, I'm getting a pen.
Yeah. One pill makes you larger, and one pill makes you small.
And it's
No.
by who?
I used to know that. I don't know that off the top of my head anymore.
I'm sure
God damn it.
if I type it into YouTube, I'll get it. Although I do think this is like a cinematic cover for the trailer.
Yeah, and it's a good version too. It has a nice sinister edge to it, or like a really trippy mystical edge to it, which is nice.
And again, like bare minimum, I like the I like the technical aspects of this, like from like the look, just like the scene in the dojo with like the light coming through and stuff, and like the shadows and stuff. Again, it's just like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just I like it a lot.
Yep. I'm gonna need to see a second trailer of this before I make judgments.
Yeah, I mean, like the story itself's not really grabbing me, but on a technical level, I like it.
Yeah, I think we haven't really seen much of the story yet. I think they're trying to keep it under wraps. I do know that the Merovingian is coming back, and I think from what I've heard, he's supposed to be the main villain again, or a main villain.
You know, if this is bad, I might try. Like, if it is bad, and I hope it isn't, you know, a part of me kind of wants to try to do a rewrite or like just a pitch idea of it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I doubt it will be bad. I'm expecting good things from the story aspect. I'm wondering how passive aggressive the Wachowskis are gonna be because of how their iconography has been used over the years, and I'm wondering how edgelordy the original movie Matrix fans are gonna be the ones who hate the sequels, because I like at least the second movie. I agree the third movie spent way too much time in the quote unquote real world. I wanted more ponderous philosophical exploration than we got in the third one. But yeah, I'm expecting this is supposed to be a sequel to all three of the original movies, and I'm wondering how much that's gonna annoy some people who only like the first one for some reason. Red pill.
Red pill. You know what's funny? Like you'd expect, like if I remember correctly, Neo isn't supposed to be like the main character, so to speak.
Um,
I don't know. I've heard a lot of conflicting things about it, so I'm not entirely sure.
Well, my standing theory is that most of the main cast is utterly irrelevant. It's basically a war between the Architect and the Oracle when you get right down to it. Everyone else is just their toys.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Um,
Because they've done this so many times before.
but again, if it were me, I'd probably make Neo like the new Morpheus, essentially.
Well, this is a different Neo regardless, because Neo dies at the end of Neo version 6
That was 7.
or 7, whichever Neo we're following is actually dead. Unless I've seen a lot of people really stupidly suggest that the machine somehow uploaded his consciousness back into the Matrix and rebooted him when he died, which is really freaking stupid. It's, at least in my opinion, it's obvious that conversation that the Oracle and the Architect have at the end is both of them being a little bit cheeky, and the Architect lying his ass off in full knowledge that he's going to do this whole cycle all over again. And I would bet money on the fact that the Oracle knows full well that he's lying his ass off and they're going to do the entire cycle all over again. But at least for this iteration, she did win. So he gave her, the tweaks she wanted to it. As, basically you won the gambit, so here, have a more kind and soft version of the Matrix. Although both of them know that they're basically going to be doing this duality between them forever. And this is the newest version of Neo, who looks different because, much like the aesthetics of everything else in the world he's in, new Matrix means new aesthetic for Neo, even though the other versions of him didn't have a different aesthetic. But that's, again, because this was the first time that in the war between the Architect and the Oracle, she got him once. Yeah, they're basically playing cosmic chess between the two of them.
And just doing all over again.
Yeah.
When someone wins.
Yeah. And the last 6 times it seems the Architect won, which is why it stayed so similar in between the variations. And the last time she won, so he tweaked it for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he even at one point straight up called himself the father of the Matrix and her the mother of the Matrix in the second one. So yeah, this entire cycle is basically them having a cheeky marital spat.
Shall we?
Yeah, red pill.
Red pill.
After all these years, to be going back to where it all started. Back to the Matrix.
Wah, wah, wah. Like, I respect the barefacedness of that pun, but still. Wah, wah, wah.
Anyway, yeah, I'm on the fence. I like the technical look of it. It's just everything else I could take or leave.
Yeah, I need a second trailer that gives us better visual effects or more complete visual effects and more clue as to what the story is.
Yeah.
And then I'll probably be on board. But for now, it looks like the most interesting part of the trailer was the song choice, which totally understand why they went with that one. That is an awesome song, and it is basically all but made for this particular franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Present me with a red pill trailer, badum-ching.
Mm-hmm.
Like Red Band trailer, except
so
you got it.
With that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Always take the red pill, kids. Blue pills are for suckers.